The year is 2017. The month, November. The world had not yet fallen apart. I was finishing up my first semester of university in my film production program, so naturally I thought I was now an expert on the art form. That was not the case. However, I was quickly learning and my process of film critique was ever evolving. Earlier that year, we were blessed with such hit films as Dunkirk, Logan, and War for the Planet of the Apes. The Marvel Cinematic Universe was also stronger than ever with its slate that year, and continually rising towards its inevitable climax starting the following year. But more pertinently, DC's film Wonder Woman, directed by Patty Jenkins, was released in early 2017 to all-around acclaim and box office success. The film was celebrated for its departure from the black hole that was the DCEU up to that point, instead opting to imbue the audience with a sense of fun and imagination, while also being a smart, savvy movie. One might say that Wonder Woman was the first real film of the DCEU. On top of its success in the technical and filmmaking realms, the project was also a shining and popular example of a movie that hit home with audiences and also starred a strong female lead. All around, this was a victory. But Wonder Woman was not DC's only planned release that year. And now we return to November, as my friend Ethan and I settle into our seats in the theater to watch Justice League, directed by Joss Whedon. Justice League is the supposed culmination of Zack Snyder's vision for the DCEU since his inception with Man of Steel. Snyder originally claimed the role of director on this film, and finished filming a considerable portion of it, but due to a tragic family emergency which we will not discuss in detail, Zack was forced to walk away from the project. That's when Joss Whedon took over. Despite the worry that the film would become a hodgepodge of visions, there was still some hope considering that Whedon was responsible for miraculously assembling the Avengers in their initial outing as a team over in the MCU. Who else could be a better pick? Ultimately, though, with the questionable track record of the DCEU thus far, Ethan and I went in cynical. And you know what? It turns out we were right too. Joss Whedon's Justice League, or as some refer to it, Justice League, was an abysmal, corporate-driven test tube abomination. Not in the same way that Suicide Squad was the year prior, but a similar result nonetheless. Unlike Suicide Squad, Justice League works structurally, and there seems to have been even the smallest stroke of process taken to create it, but really it was still a directionless, visionless, soulless product. And now a brief synopsis. Shortly after the death of Superman, Batman discovers the presence of alien creatures on the prowl in Gotham City. When he kills one of these aliens, its blood splatters and forms a pattern on the wall, depicting 3 boxes. After realizing these aliens are starting to invade because of Superman's absence, he embarks to recruit other heroes for some global defense. Using the knowledge of other metahumans from Lex Luthor's super archives seen in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, he and Diana Prince, aka Wonder Woman, scrape together Aquaman, Cyborg, and the Flash, 3 uncharacters who live in this movie's head rent-free. Wonder Woman exposits the story behind the 3 boxes Batman saw in the alien blood splatter, and tells the team that those boxes are the 3 mother boxes. She tells them the one in her home kingdom of Amazonians has been stolen by the film's cartoon antagonist, Steppenwolf, while Aquaman says the same about the one from his home of Atlantis. Cyborg reveals he has the last one secured because, of course, all 3 are directly accessible to 3 of our main characters who happen to already know each other. Also, Cyborg's mother box was used to turn him into a cyborg to begin with. I feel like that's important to mention. Never mind, it doesn't really affect the film. The team then decides to fucking grave rob Superman's dead body and bring him back to life with their mother box. Superman wakes up cranky, and this results in the only fun scene in the entire movie, in which the team tries to calm him down. During this debacle, Steppenwolf steals the mother box, which was the last one he needed to complete his plans of doing generic alien movie things. After Superman flies off for a bit to mellow out, the rest of the team go and face Steppenwolf and get their asses kicked. But oh my god, would you believe it? Superman shows up. He comically beats Steppenwolf like nothing and then takes the team out for ice cream. The end. After the movie had finished, Ethan and I felt like we had forfeited the money we spent on our tickets, and only felt solace in the fact that at least some of the admission price would go to supporting our local theater. We walked away that night feeling that the fall of the DCU was imminent. Over the next few years, DC's slate of releases proved to be middling at best, consisting from 2018 to 2020 of Aquaman, Shazam, Birds of Prey, and Wonder Woman 1984. Yes, even the charm of the Wonder Woman franchise had been corrupted by this point, and her role in Justice League was substanceless and disappointing. Foiling DC's path was Marvel's, for over these few years, the MCU had successfully reached its series-wide climax and finale, with worldwide acclaim, and Marvel had even begun to announce its plans for the future. It seemed that this was the final nail in the coffin for the DCEU. Pause for dramatic effect. The year is now 2021. The month, March. Fans had been dreaming of it. It had been hyped up for months now, and it was finally time to release the Snyder Cut. Zack Snyder, not having directed a project since what little creative input he had on Justice League, was coming back, and he was coming back hard. In mid-March, we received Zack Snyder's untouched vision of Justice League in its original design. Released via streaming, this may have been the most personal project Zack had ever worked on. With only a small percentage of reshoots and completely discarding the footage Whedon had shot, he completely rejuvenated the idea of the Justice League film and breathed new life into the result. And he did it all for no pay. The mark of a true artist, I say. I rewatched Whedon's version immediately before going into the Snyder Cut for the first time, and I must say, the differences are enough to call this a different movie altogether. To clarify, the story makes so much more sense, the characters are written much better, and the film actually feels like it was the making of a single filmmaker. Objectively, I don't even think particularly highly of this film, but that doesn't change how blown away I am at the striking contrast between what was jumbled in post-production for the theatrical release and what was carefully crafted for Snyder's passion project. Regardless of how I feel about the movie itself, how it sits in my memory, how it looks, how it compares to Marvel's efforts, I have to praise this movie for representing a victory for passionate filmmakers, regardless of their skill or relatability. In previous episodes, we have discussed what went wrong with the two prior Zack Snyder DCEU entries, Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, and how those movies would feed into the greater Justice League story. But the existence of this movie speaks about so much more than the culmination of a cinematic universe. It stands for artistic integrity breaking through corporate walls, and succeeding at it. Zack Snyder took his movie back, and for the record, I think his cut of Justice League is better than both Man of Steel and BVS. And it's certainly worlds better than Justice League. There has been a prominent display of interest from fans suggesting to restore the Snyderverse. With the franchise having been through its dark age, it looks like Zack Snyder's Justice League might be the light at the end of that tunnel, and the rebirth of the DCEU may indeed be on the other side. But that's just my opinion, and I'm not the only one here to talk about this. So now let me introduce our other hosts, Carolina and Marco, to give us their takes on the Justice League situation.
Wow.
Damn, Dan.
Wow.
You really stepped up our intros from the last couple weeks.
Really took me on a journey.
Yeah, wow.
Felt like I was there. And I never even saw the original Justice League.
Would you like to go first, Carol?
Yeah. So I couldn't find the original Justice League. Honestly, just the DCEU movies are so hard to find on streaming. They're all in different places, and I don't understand how or why. Anyway, so I skipped the original Justice League. I watched a really detailed YouTube video that described the differences, and then Dan even filled in some more blanks. So, I think I'm good. I heard it was bad. I get it. But I did watch the Snyder Cut. So, honestly, I feel like that's worth more. Because, it was 4 whole hours of my life. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's what we're here to talk about, so I won't really spoil every thought I had. But for a 4-hour movie that was following 2 movies that obviously we didn't really like that much, I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't hate it. I'll say it didn't feel like 4 hours. It felt like maybe like 3:30. So yeah. That was good for it. And I did feel like the characters all got fleshed out, and I was generally like, yeah, it was fine. I get it.
Dan, I'm very happy to hear what you just said, because like we were talking about before we started recording this, Dan had been very secretive about his thoughts. And so I was like, okay, either Dan is going to love this movie or he's going to hate it worse than the theatrical. And I was like, I don't know what to expect. But thankfully, I think your summary perfectly captured kind of what Carol and I were saying in the group chat. Yeah, my take on this movie is I think of it 2 different ways. One is in comparison to Justice League, and then
I didn't know it was called that also, and I had to stop myself from cackling when you said it.
And then one is just as its own movie, as a sequel to Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman. So in comparison to Justice League, yes, it is. I mean, it's a complete film, and like we're gonna get into the differences, but you know, there's no weird color correction that goes on like post-production wise. You know, there's no weird scenes that are reshot that are intercut with stuff that was already shot, where Ben Affleck is like 20 pounds heavier and is like dealing with alcoholism. And I don't even mean that to be rude. I mean, the dude literally like checked in for like alcoholism like at a rehab center. So like he was not in a good place during those reshoots. So I mean, it's just so clear that yeah, this movie is a complete movie and is like head and shoulders above the theatrical cut.
And
now,
they didn't have to remove the mustache.
Oh my god.
Mustache.
I mean, we'll get into it, but yeah. Now, as a movie, you know, my cousin Darian, who listens to this podcast, him and I were talking about it. Shout out to Darian. And he asked me what I thought. And I was really thinking about it, and the final answer I came up with was, I think it's good enough. Like, I think based on what was set up in Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman, and as much as there's lots of characterization that those movies get wrong, I think this is kind of a good enough version of a Justice League movie that we could have had based on those two movies. And I don't think it's great, and I don't think it lives up to other superhero movies that we've seen. But, you know, we talked a lot about in Man of Steel that as much as it doesn't work, there are moments in there that you really hang on to, and like by the end, we were all kind of like, let's see where this universe goes. And then Batman vs. Superman happened, and I was like, let this universe die. But after seeing this movie, I very much do kind of feel like, yeah, let him make his other two Justice League sequels.
I would watch them.
I would watch them. It's not.
I agree.
It's not my, you know, Greg Miller from Kind of Funny is a big DC fan, and he's like reviewed these movies, and I think he said it the best, where he's like, if you sat me down and were like, pitch a DC cinematic universe, this is not what I would come up with. This is not like my interpretation of DC. But having this be what he went with, this movie kind of fulfills that, I think, to Dan's point, in the best way. I think it is the best of the three movies that we've watched, and I think that there is enough cool stuff in here that, yeah, absolutely, I would be down to see where he takes it, even though I kind of know where he takes it, and a lot of the places he takes it aren't great, but that's okay. Like, I would be down to watch it, and I am really interested to talk with you guys just about, yeah, the more creator aspect of what went down between Joss and Zack, and how Zack really got fucked over, and how I am very happy he got to at least release this version, and that pretty universally everyone is like, yeah, dude, like, this is fine. You did fine. You don't deserve, like, all the shit that you got. Yeah, so that's kind of my take on the movie.
And I feel it's important to end our trilogy of episodes on this note.
Yeah. Because
we have, like I said in the intro, we have, like, gone into detail with what we very much don't like about the first two. More so with Batman v Superman especially. Mm-hmm. But I feel ending on this, well, first we're going to talk about the theatrical, but ending on the Snyder Cut is a good note to end on, I think.
I think so. Yeah, I agree. I think it does, yeah, like kind of like Man of Steel. It leaves you in a place where you're like, you know what? Whatever the bad stuff was, I think there's enough good that I would be interested to see. And I do think, we'll get into lots of the behind-the-scenes stuff, but obviously with this movie coming out, like, Zack's been giving a lot of interviews and stuff, and hearing him explain a little bit his take more on what this movie was supposed to be, and, like, his take on the DC universe kind of interested me a little bit, and I was like, yeah, I guess I could see where you're coming from, even if what didn't always work. But I think this movie is where it works the most with what his ideas were. So we'll get into that later. It doesn't matter, because I know we want to talk about the theatrical cut and how much of an abomination it was.
But I think like, to sum up what you're saying is, like you said, it's still not the ideal DC cinematic universe you would imagine.
Yeah.
But it does the absolute best with the material it had to work with prior.
Absolutely. Yeah. For sure.
And I agree.
Totally good enough. Gets the job done. You know what I mean?
Well, I think even just the fact that he got people to sit through a 4-hour movie and they weren't like, I want to die by the end, like, that alone is a feat, and, like, kudos.
Oh my god, like, can you imagine the material of Batman v Superman extended to 4 hours?
That's what I was worried.
I couldn't even pay attention to that whole movie. Like,
yeah.
You'd have made 2 banana bread loaves, Carolina.
Yeah.
One for each half, maybe 6, one for every
Yeah.
chapter.
Oh my god.
This movie is it's engaging. Like at the end of the day, it's engaging. And I mean, let's get right into the comparisons to Justice League, like the theatrical cut.
Yeah, let's do it.
Like my biggest problem, I remember. So I generally see most superhero movies in theaters. I didn't see the theatrical cut of Justice League in theaters because it was like right around my birthday weekend. And I was like, I don't want to
didn't want to spoil
Yeah,
it.
I was like, I don't want to do that to myself. But I remember Dan saw it and we talked about it, and he was like, dude, this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. And I was like, oh no. And the first time I watched it, it was such an odd experience because I was just not engaged whatsoever with the movie, and I kind of felt like I kept stopping to be like, am I even watching a movie right? Like, what am I do? Like, I didn't. It was just this layer of like stuff was happening on the screen, and it didn't seem to like flow or anything make sense. And there are a lot of scenes that I think are actually similar between the two movies, but then for some reason in the Snyder cut they work. And it's not for some reason, it's because they were all shot with purpose and edited with purpose. And even if what's happening in the scene is kind of silly, I feel engaged with it because I understand it, and it's not just a haphazard attempt to put a movie into theaters.
Yeah, putting a movie into theaters that you were just thrown into, that they didn't move the release date for, that had a hard time of 2 hours, and he cut it to exactly 2 hours on the nose.
Yeah, it's like literally exactly 2 hours.
Which means that the cutting process must have been brutal, because he must, like, that is such a restriction. And, like, maybe if it was an hour and a half, you'd think, like, okay, he still, like, had an idea and was able to cut it down. But the fact that it was 2 hours, you know, he was like, fuck, I should leave, like, this scene and this scene for context, but I just can't because the studio won't let me. And I'm sure that didn't help. I know I haven't actually seen it. This is just based on stuff I've read about the development process of this film. But it seems like a nightmare.
Well, that's a good point. And even if it's not true that he left some out that he shouldn't have to cut it down to 2 hours, it might also be the opposite, where it was under 2 hours and he left filler in, because I can definitely see that with the theatrical cut. Like, there's a lot of shit at the beginning that isn't in the Snyder cut. Well, that does not. Sorry.
No, go for it, Dan. Keep saying what you were saying.
I was just gonna say it clearly does not need to be there, because as we see later in the Snyder cut, like, it's much clearer without some of these particular scenes. But
yeah, I mean, this is what I think the problem is, and I think it's what happens when this is, I mean, people shit on the Marvel movies for being like movies made by committee, but I think the theatrical cut of Justice League is maybe the most, like,
it's literally that.
It is literally a movie made by committee, because, and Carol and I were talking about a little bit about this before, but, Zack shoots 4 hours, I mean, not 4 hours of footage, but like however many hours of footage he shot for a 4-hour movie, and WB Warner Brothers does this really awful thing of, like, basically wanting to have brought someone in. As far as I understand, the plan was always, in post-production, we'll bring someone else in to, like, finish the movie, and, like, who will, like, listen to us because we don't like what Zack's done with BVS. And then, unfortunately, like we talked about, we don't have to go into details, but, like, Zack suffered a very sad tragedy in his own family and was kind of like, I need to step away from the movie. And Warner Brothers was like, yes, which is, like, the worst thing you can do. It was like Zack wasn't even out the door, and they were like, yeah, Joss, come in.
It's like the slimiest
yeah,
thing.
It's awful. And then, and they give Joss all these very specific directives of, like, the movie's got to be brighter, and it can only be 2 hours, and it needs to be funnier. And then you get this thing, and, like, to Dan's point, there's, like, you can tell what Superman footage is reshot in the Justice League because of the, like, mustache that they had to CGI out. Which maybe the movie's far enough away now that we should, like, talk about this. At the time, when they went to reshoot footage, Henry Cavill was shooting footage for Mission Impossible where he has a mustache. And basically, Warner Brothers was like, hey, Paramount, can, like, Henry Cavill shoot his mustache? Or shave it? And
shoot his
mustache. Can he shoot it? They were like, can he shave it? And, like, And the funny thing was, they were like, look, like, we've put together, like, a prosthetics department, and we're going to do these tests to show you that we can, like, create a prosthetic mustache. And just to, like, spite Warner Brothers, Paramount was like, no, fuck you. No, he can't shave it, because he needs it for our movie.
For our better movie.
For our much better movie. And, yeah, so in Justice League, like, you can tell when, you know, that's one of the biggest problems with it. Superman has a CGI upper lip, and it looks awful. It doesn't even look photoreal. It's not even just...
horrible.
It's not even just, like, the Uncanny Valley thing of, like, you can tell something's wrong. It legitimately doesn't look photoreal in a lot of scenes. Like, it looks CG. It looks like a, like, Toy Story character is on his lip. And that was the fascinating thing, is, like, watching that movie, and you're like, oh... Every scene Superman's in Justice League, almost every scene, he has the CGI mustache.
Yeah.
And that was, like, the first moment where I was like, how much of this did he reshoot? Because at the time, like, the rumors were, yeah, it was, like, 95% done, and he shot, like, a couple scenes. But then, you know, that whole opening scene with Batman and the Parademon, where there's the burglar that's just tied up, and, like, comedically at one point just like hops into frame and is like, what's going on, Batman? And Batman's just like having a conversation with this guy, and then, you know, you get into the weird perverted stuff with like Wonder Woman. Like, there was a shot that I joked about in the Man of Steel episode of it's when like Batman and Barry Allen are getting off the plane, and in the theatrical cut the shot is just like it's her butt, like her butt is the shot, and you like see them like kind of like off center a little bit of the frame.
Yeah.
Or, you know, there's a scene where the Flash falls on Wonder Woman and like accidentally like falls on her boobs, and then like gets up really fast and is like, oh, sorry about that. And, you know, in a lot of the controversy, like after this movie after the theatrical cut came out and we started to learn more stuff about this, is that apparently there was lots of issues with like actors on the set doing reshoots with Joss Whedon. And so it really is like an entirely different movie, because there
apparently
even
he
scenes...
wrote 80 new pages for it.
Well, this is the thing, is that even scenes, so, you know, in the theatrical cut and the Snyder cut, we have a scene where Batman goes to visit Aquaman as Bruce Wayne. That scene is like entirely reshot. Even though there's lots of dialogue that's the same, you can tell because Ben Affleck, like I was kind of joking about earlier, looks like...
He looks different.
He put on some weight. He was dealing with alcoholism at the time. And, yeah, I don't know. It's so weird that like Zack got screwed over this much, and that this is such a movie of like, we need this many % more jokes, and you can only have this runtime, and it needs to be brighter and like artificially brighter, because like, and I mean, Dan, you can talk about this, but like a large part of like costume design obviously is like you're going into it with an idea of like lighting in mind, and even cinematography, like scenes are lit a certain way to be color corrected a certain way in the editing process, and then Joss Whedon just came in and like turned up the saturation of everything, and also like just changed background colors, and so everyone looks stupid, and like, what movie are you in?
Yeah, and not to jump too far ahead, but in the Snyder cut, Superman, when he comes back, he wears a black Superman suit, which is like, okay, it's clearly been recolored for the Joss Whedon cut in post. Like it's like a coloring book. Like they colored all over the suit, and it's just, it feels so fake knowing that.
Well, it's even funny watching the comparison video because it's clips one after the other, and just seeing the colors in the Joss Whedon version versus the Snyder cut. I was like, how did people watch it? Like, I know, yeah, sure, sometimes movies are bright because, you know, it's daytime and they're outside, but this was just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like they overcompensated for the feedback of, like, make it more like a Marvel movie where it's not depressing looking.
Yeah.
And it just went way too far in the other direction. And it's like literally what you were saying, Marco, about checking all those boxes from Warner Brothers. If you have, like... It reminds me of like when you go on a website and you want to like order like a computer or something, and you can check all these boxes of specs that you want. Mm-hmm. Like you can custom make a computer to order online, like a laptop. That's like if the laptop was this movie and Warner Brothers was like ordering it, they like gave Joss Whedon this list of all the specs that they wanted in the final product, and then he had to like find ways to work around getting them in there. And that's not how you make a movie.
No, absolutely.
And that's why I call it a test tube movie. And like I said in the intro, Suicide Squad clearly suffered from the same problems. But the Snyder Cut is very much like, whether you like it or not, it's one person's directorial vision, and that's why it sits so much better with me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it definitely, Warner Brothers was on a bit of a power trip at the time, for sure. Because like you said, I mean, it happened with Suicide Squad, where they brought in the company that cut the trailer for the movie to recut the movie, even though, like, the director was...
Yeah, that's a good point, too.
Like, the director, David Ayer, like, well-known director, was, like, supposed to have final cut on the movie, and I forget... They got around the contract in some loophole or something, and they were able to, like, have the trailer company recut it, which is just like, what?
It's so stupid.
It's so dumb. It's such an awful choice.
Just think of it as a giant trailer.
Yeah, well, and I guess...
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, and the frustrating thing with, especially, like, with the Snyder Cut is... Or not, like, with the theatrical cut compared to the Snyder Cut is, like, you greenlit this when it was a script. Like, you knew what was being made, and ultimately you guys had to see dailies about what was being shot. So I don't understand how you let it get that far. Like, I guess the example I'm thinking of is Solo. Because Solo, which I'm not saying that the version of Solo Star Wars story we got is great, but, Lord and Miller were working on that movie, and Disney was seeing dailies and stuff come back, and they were unhappy with it, and they fired them and brought in a new guy, and they rewrote it, and they kind of started from scratch. And, did it turn out being a great movie? No, but at least it's, like, a coherent movie. And I'm so fascinated that they snaked Zack out of this. Like, at least have the, like, just the decency of a human to be like, listen, we don't like this direction. But the thing is, it's not that they didn't like the direction. They clearly don't know it was just like after they started getting feedback about Batman v Superman and getting the comparisons to Marvel that the executives were like, oh, I guess we shouldn't do this. Like, it has nothing to do with taste. And I guess that's, like, the most frustrating thing for me is they don't care.
They're just following the crowd.
Yeah, they're literally just, like, following legitimately the internet crowd. I'm just, like, going through Twitter and being like, what are people saying about our movie? Which is so sad. And it's just, it's also so weird to me, though, now having seen the Snyder Cut. Like, sure, people were shitting on Batman vs Superman. I get it. But if you saw, like, dailies and, like, somewhat cut together footage from the Snyder Cut, like, how could you possibly think Joss Whedon's cut of the movie was in any way an improvement?
I know, yeah.
But
like, that's the thing
the
that
biggest
baffles
point to be
me.
made.
Apparently, people were saying that people were calling some of the earlier Snyder cuts unwatchable, like some of the WB execs, and that's why they were like, okay, we need another person. And I guess Joss Whedon's version, when they did, like, testing and showed it to audiences before release, it was testing as well as Wonder Woman did. So that's why they're like, good enough, let's go. I don't know who they brought in for that audience, but apparently they thought it was as good as Wonder Woman, and they trusted it and just went with it, despite the fact that they personally might not have loved it. But also, the reason they refused to push back the release date to make the film, any better, if they had a little more time, is so the executives could keep their annual bonuses. Motherfuckers.
Nice. Classic Warner Brothers.
They don't give a shit. Yeah.
Awful. That's so awful. And it's so sad too, like just the backdrop of, like, yeah, just, like, screwing over this one person while they're going through, like, the hardest time in their life already. Yeah. It's like what the hell is wrong with you that you have to, like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess we can maybe just get into, like, more specific stuff now about the differences between the cuts that really stands out. The couple of things that really stand out to me, obviously one we touched on is the mustache. Obviously, like, the CGI lip, awful.
I think the only scene that was a Snyder scene that doesn't have the mustache is that scene I talked about where, like, Superman wakes up and the team is trying to, like, wrestle him in.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's the only scene that I can remember that doesn't have that stupid CGI upper
I think
lip.
you're right. That scene's about, like, the same between the two. And then, yeah, also, I think every other scene... Yeah, it's fascinating. So, like, that's something that stands out to me. Something else that stands out to me is obviously Ben Affleck totally checked out in Justice League. I mean,
yeah.
just isn't even there. Like,
it's like Amy Adams in Batman v
Yeah,
Superman.
I mean, and honestly, like, it's hard to watch, again, to know that well, here's a person that was, after the fact we know was going through something really difficult and is like having to be Batman in this really shittily written reshoot thing, who was probably just like, why the fuck am I here? And that sucks. That's awful. And then I guess just the weird perverted stuff with Wonder Woman also really stands out to me. And like, not even that I'm the most, obviously if there's something like really weird going on with like female characters, it stands out to me, but I'm not the type of person that like gets really pays attention, obviously, as like just a white guy, and gets in depth about like, oh, that like really specific thing you did is actually low-key sexist. Like, that stuff doesn't generally stand out to me. But I mean, for fuck's sakes, dude, like, why are we having jokes from like 1960s movies? And then I guess, after this movie's come out, like I alluded to, lots of cast members have come out saying that Joss is like a scumbag, and then lots of other people from,
I read about that too.
Like other productions he's worked in have come out saying that he's kind of a scumbag. And I guess that scene with like Flash falling on Gal Gadot's like boobs, I guess she straight up was like, I'm not doing this scene. And if I remember correctly, I believe they actually had like just a stunt woman do it, and they just like CGI'd her face on it because she's like, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm not doing this scene. This is ridiculous. But I mean, this is where Warner Brothers spent their money, was on shit like that. And then something else I just want to point out, and I guess here's the thing, right? Like, the differences are in two categories. It's stuff he added in the theatrical cut versus stuff that's just different. So, and I think most of what I'm like making fun of right now is just stuff that he added. So like, obviously the mustache stuff, the weird sex stuff. And then the other thing he added that makes me really just like, what the hell, is like a lot of the dialogue in the theatrical cut is like,
bad.
It's not even coherent dialogue. Like, when Superman comes back to life and he's talking to Lois Lane, and she says, like, how did it feel, like, dying and come back to life? And Superman goes, itchy.
Yeah.
Like, that's literally he goes, itchy. And then she goes, ha ha. And then, like, it just cut. And I was like, this is a joke, right? Like, this, I'm not even, the thing is, I'm not even doing this for comedic effect. That is the dialogue exchange between the two of them.
I can back that up.
And
it totally is.
And it's just like, you guys spent how much fucking money reshooting this movie and replacing Zack Snyder's like scene with that moment, and like Joss Whedon like wrote that moment into the screenplay. It's like, it is like shocking stuff for me.
Also, apparently there's a scene with a
another
Russian family.
I was just gonna. That's literally what I was just gonna say.
Oh, it's not a scene. It's not a scene. It's an entire subplot in the movie. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I heard that was not.
Dan, go ahead. Take it, buddy.
So, yeah, basically, this is like exclusive to the Joss Whedon cut.
Yeah.
That like he felt there wasn't enough empathy with the people that like lived in the Chernobyl town where the final.
No. Stop.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah. So yeah, he wrote in this like Russian family. It's very. What's his name? Roland Emmerich.
Yes, it is. It is so Roland. You're right. It's just like it's extras that we never. They're never like, they don't have an arc or anything. No. They're just cut back to constantly, and we're supposed to care about them. And then like Flash saves them. And it's funny now because, and I guess let's transition into talking about like how screwed over a lot of the other Justice League members got that didn't have their own solo movies, because everyone in this movie, and for better or worse, I've said a lot that I don't love Ezra Miller's interpretation of the Flash, like just his like performance. But all these characters had like arcs in the movie, and the Flash and Cyborg in particular are like pretty much cut out of Justice League entirely.
Yeah,
especially
they got fucked over.
Especially Cyborg. Cyborg has nothing to do with Justice League. But then I was thinking about the Flash, and it's so funny because they completely cut out the time travel stuff. Mm-hmm. So all that's left for the Flash to do is do that weird shit of saving the family. And it kind of hit me where I was like, oh, that's why they had to reshoot that, because they didn't want to use the time travel stuff. And I did read somewhere.
Why didn't they want to use the time travel stuff?
I read somewhere that was a WB directive. They were like, we don't want the time travel stuff in this movie.
I don't get it, though.
I don't get it either. And so they had to reshoot that. And that also explains, so something I was like, in our like just general intro thoughts on this movie, there was that scene in the original cut that made me like I was like, what am I watching? Where when they go to resurrect Superman, and in the theatrical cut, a Cyborg says that the cube has to drop and it has to be energized at the moment that it hits the water in order to like bring Superman back to life.
Which is always stupid. I always hated that.
So the Flash has to like run at the exact right moment to energize the cube. And I was like, that's dumb. And then in the theatrical cut, it's not like he doesn't have to energize it at the exact right moment. The purpose of that scene in the theatrical in the Snyder cut. Fuck, so many fucking cuts. The purpose of that scene in the Snyder cut is that the cube actually goes into the water, but we're setting up payoff, like storytelling, the Flash's ability to reverse time, and then we see it rise a little bit as he like goes to touch it. And then I was thinking about it like in Justice League, and I was like, oh, so the only reason in Justice League that he had to touch it exactly was because they had the footage of him touching it exactly, but because they cut out the time travel stuff, they couldn't explain that it needed to like rise, like it actually fell in and came up to that level. So it's shit like that where you're like, oh, this is so like cringe-inducingly stupid.
Yeah, and it's stupider after seeing the Snyder cut, what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Like, it's stupid when you're watching the theatrical cut the first time, but then it's even more stupid when you like have all this context, this background context. You're totally right. But yeah, I think my least favorite part of the theatrical cut is that butchering of Cyborg's character, because he was like he was one of my favorite characters in the Snyder cut. I'd say. I don't know about you guys.
He was the heart of the film, and
he is.
apparently
He's the,
he was always meant to be.
In the words of Zack himself, yeah,
he's a through line.
I mean, my research, despite not watching the film, I didn't want to pay for it, but I was like, I can Wikipedia stuff.
We talked a lot about obviously how, this movie didn't have the right setup for each individual character the way like the Marvel movies did, yada yada yada. But talking about how this movie I think is good enough, I think something it does well is take a character like Cyborg that we didn't have set up for. But then, by making him kind of like the heart of the movie and the through line, we get enough character stuff with him that it actually kind of feels like, in a lot of places, a Cyborg movie that all these characters are like coming into. And I think that works because like we have characterization for Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman. So then, the only character that we're really like introducing, like since Cyborg is the kind of the heart of this movie, would be the Flash and Aquaman.
But Aquaman was getting his movie anyway.
But Aquaman was getting his movie, and I think also, it's pretty straightforward. He's Aquaman. He's Jason Momoa. Like, what do you need to know? Like, there's not a whole lot.
And they took out in the Snyder cut. They took out all of his stupid stuff. So I liked him a lot better in the Snyder cut too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone comes off better in the Snyder cut. I think, I don't think there's a character that doesn't. Even, I guess even
I'm still not.
Yeah.
I'll just say I'm still not the biggest fan of Ezra Miller's Flash.
I'm not either.
And you said it was the direction. I think he's just not right for it.
Yeah.
And there was actually a scene that I thought was really stupid in the Snyder cut, which is actually his first scene when he slows down time.
Yeah, and he grabs
to like save that girl that's getting hit by the hot
hair
dog truck or whatever,
and then puts a hot dog
and
in
there's
his
like
pocket.
hot dogs flying around.
So romantic.
I thought that scene was so dumb.
I thought that scene was really dumb too. I don't love Ezra Miller's The Flash. I think a big part of that has to do with the fact that
we don't love Ezra Miller. He punched a woman.
Yeah, he punched someone, right?
Yeah, isn't he an asshole?
Yeah.
He is. He's also just annoying. I've always thought he was annoying, and then he punched someone, and I was like, yeah, great. Obviously, of course he would. What a piece of shit. I think a big reason why a lot of us don't love The Flash is because, one, we've seen, like, speedsters in a lot of the Marvel movies, and, like, it's so hard to like develop a new way of showing that, I feel like. So when you've seen like Quicksilver from the X-Men movies, and it's like that's such like an iconic and wonderful way of like showing speedsters, that then like doing that in this movie, you're kind of like, you're not Quicksilver. Plus Ezra Miller is just kind of weird. Plus he's clearly just supposed to be Spider-Man from Civil War. Like they didn't even try. Like he is just a 1-for-1 Spider-Man from Civil War.
They're doing the Tony Stark, Peter Parker
Absolutely.
thing.
And then, and I think the other thing on top of that is there's been a Flash TV show that's been going on for like 7 seasons now, and it's like universally loved.
Holy shit, is it 7 seasons already?
And like the first I mean, I know, obviously it's a CW show, so like as the later seasons have gone on, it's got a little bit cringy. But like the first season in particular is a really strong interpretation of the Flash character and does such a good job of setting up his origin, setting up his relationship with Iris West, who, by the way, the girl he saves in this movie is Iris West, which is like his once and future love. But, you know, we're never going to get that because
she's never mentioned by name.
Yeah, she's never mentioned by name, so no one would know, which, yeah. But yeah, I think that's, you know, I still think The Flash comes off the worst. Like, I think Cyborg, if you are not a fan of Cyborg, you get everything you need to be a fan of Cyborg by the end of this movie. I think same with Aquaman. I think you get anything you need to be a fan of his by the end of this movie, even though, again, Amber Heard is, what's her name? Mara, and she's apparently also a sketch in real life.
Yeah.
So, like, you can't win. But Green Goblin, he's that one guy. He's like his other friend. Yeah. And I was like, the Green Goblin's here.
Nice to see him in a movie.
I love seeing him. Anytime he pops up. Yeah, but then I think the Flash is the one.
Green Goblin?
Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, he plays.
Oh, okay, love him.
In the original Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay, sorry. I thought you were referencing him as Green Goblin in this film, and you broke my brain. And I was like, wait, I just took a note on him. His name started with a V. Who?
Volko.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do think Flash comes off the worst still, even in this cut. Even though he has like an arc and like he does his thing of running back in time, whatever.
And the time travel thing is really
cool.
That's
cool. But I think like if you aren't a fan of the Flash, the scenes with his dad mean nothing to you. And if you aren't a fan of the Flash, the scene with Iris means nothing to you because her name's not even said. So I
should have had a name tag.
Yeah, I think for me, either we needed a Flash movie still before this, regardless of what cut you watch, or I think the smarter thing, if you're DC, would have just been like, hey, let's just take the Flash from the TV show. Like, why are we literally have a TV show that has multiple seasons setting up this character and that everyone universally loves. Why can't he just also be the Flash in this movie? Like, why don't we just do the Marvel thing of like the TV crossing over with movies? Like, why not do that?
That could have been interesting, and with the tone of the Snyder cut, that could have worked.
Absolutely,
that definitely could have worked.
And the other thing I was thinking too is like, I remember when Batman vs Superman was coming out. That's around the time that Gotham was coming out, and I always had this idea in my head like that the TV shows would be the younger version of a lot of these characters. Like, so the TV shows would explain the Flash's origin, and Gotham would explain this DC movie universe's young Batman origin. And that's why we were getting these characters that like were already just showing up and doing stuff, because we would get like their like origins on TV, which they didn't do. But I think that just would have been a better way to go about the Flash in particular, who, yeah, I still think is a little bit underwritten, and I still think Ezra Miller is just not right at all for the role. I don't know why he was cast.
The Flash has a very juicy backstory and lore that you like. Cyborg and Aquaman, they worked because they're not, like you said, they're more straightforward. Yes. But the Flash is a different case.
Flash is very complicated. Yeah.
Is he supposed to be super hyper, or was that just a choice?
That was a choice.
Because I know nothing about Barry Allen and what he's written as in comics or portrayed in any other universe. So I wasn't sure if this... Because this is the thing, even in the Snyder Cut, I know they took out a lot of the jokes, but even then, the Flash in general, the whole tone shifted anytime a word came out of his mouth, and it felt so out of place. Like, other than the time travel stuff, which, yes, we've all acknowledged, really cool, but every time he talked, I was like, I get it, you, like, run fast, so your brain works fast, and you need to talk really quickly, but it's not
But that's
right.
that's not the thing at all. So, like, like, here's the thing. I can give you a quick rundown.
A snack hole.
I can give you a quick rundown.
Oh my god, that's right.
on Barry Allen, just so you know, like, understand the difference. So, here's what is like true that I guess this movie technically gets right is that yes, the Flash technically like has a fast metabolism and can like heal fast and like needs to constantly eat. I would not call that like a defining character trait that is worthwhile having multiple scenes in the movie dedicated to, but you know, to each their own. Yeah. And then like Dan was saying with his backstory, like the reason his dad is in jail is because when he was a kid, like at one point he was like at home with his family and he just starts seeing these like red and yellow like blurs in his house and like his mom dies. And he's like, what? And then the police show up and are like, okay, well, like the dad was the only other adult in the house, so we're going to arrest him. But Barry's like, no, that's not what happened. So the Flash's origin is that his dad gets arrested and he's so like fed up with the criminal justice system that he becomes like a forensic scientist. And
well,
then like
we get that.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
At the end.
But the thing is, him being a forensic scientist is how he becomes the Flash normally. Like, because, like, while he's doing experiments and shit, because, I don't know, he's just doing experiments, he, like, accidentally turns himself into the Flash. But then it turns out, in, like, later stories, that what he saw as a kid was actually his arch nemesis named Reverse Flash, who wears a yellow costume. And he went back in time to kill Barry's mom, and the Flash also went back in time. So, like, Barry's origin is, like, a paradox of, like...
Whoa, that's
fun! It is fun!
Yeah.
And then the other thing is there's this, like, really famous story that they're gonna do in the next Flash movie, apparently, called Flashpoint, where the Flash is kind of like, man, fuck this, I want my mom to be alive. So, like, he goes back in time to, like, double team with the other Flash and stop the Reverse Flash from killing his mom. But then by doing that, it's like a whole butterfly effect thing where the entire DC universe is different. So then he has to, like, fix that and actually, like, learn that he needs to let his mom die, which is, like, really sad. And then that, like, resets the universe in different ways. Which, like, all this Flash stuff is, like, really cool, and it's all done on the TV show. And yeah, I guess in this movie he's just comedic relief. And
yeah, I was gonna say the TV show did the Flashpoint story, didn't it?
yeah, and you get that thing of, like, him saving his mom, but then him going back and, like, having a moment where, like, the other version of himself that he, like, sees back in time is kind of like no, like, it's like the Man of Steel moment where the dad's like, don't save me, but it's not stupid.
Yeah.
Because it's actually, like, it's really emotional where he's like wants to save his mom and the guy's like, no, you can't. And then he, like, lets Reverse Flash, like, stab his mom or whatever, but he doesn't save her, but, like, he gets to, like, have a moment with her where he like sits with her while she dies and is like, hey, look, like, this is me from the future and, like, I'm okay, just so you know. And it's like, anyway, there's, like, really cool storytelling stuff you can do with the Flash, and they don't do much of it in this. So I still think between the two cuts, I've noticed very little difference, and I think a lot of that has to do with, yeah, like, Ezra, his performance. He's just kind of, like, shitty, and I don't like it.
But yeah, I didn't even think about, you brought up the fact that, like, him becoming a forensic scientist, like, at the end of the movie,
Yeah.
like, after his origin, that doesn't even make any sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense.
Because so he was just randomly struck by lightning.
Yeah.
And, like, people have been struck by lightning in history, and they don't turn into, like, a really fast dude.
Yeah, I mean, it's also unfortunate because it does that thing where it takes away a lot of the, like, agency in him becoming a hero. Like, because him, like, choosing to be a forensic scientist is what leads him to be a hero, but him choosing to be a forensic scientist is because of, like, his dad. But the whole reason the paradox exists, the whole reason the Reverse Flash goes back in time to kill his mom is because he, like, it's almost like a Joker-Batman relationship. Like, he wants the Flash to exist to be able to battle the Flash. So, like, that's why that paradox exists. So if you have him not choose to become a forensic scientist until after he's already the Flash, then what was even the point of the Reverse Flash killing his mom? Because it doesn't directly lead to his origin anymore. Like, it's all kind of, like, weird. And it's not really explained. And if you are, like, someone like Carol or someone who hasn't watched the Flash TV show or whatever, and you're just watching this movie, you're like, so his dad's in jail? But, like, we don't, like, as an audience member watching either cut of this movie, you are not presented with the information that his dad isn't a bad person. Do you know what I mean?
He says that he was falsely accused for...
I get it, but, like, we don't see that. Like, so he could just be lying.
Him.
I mean, do we? Why? Why do we, like...
if his son thinks that's the case, I believe him.
I don't know. It just...
But it's also, like, we never get the flashback of seeing the weird circumstances of his mom's death.
Yes.
And it just seems like a normal murder case.
Yeah, it's...
in this timeline.
So it's weird that he's obsessed with it. Like, when his dad is like, you have to let me go, normally that's like a thing of, like, dude, like, this is a weird sci-fi thing. Like, just let me be in jail. It's clearly supposed to be this way. But, yeah, in this movie, his dad's just like, go live your life. And he's like, what's a resume? I don't know. I got a resume in my pocket. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, Ezra Miller, shut up.
Another thing I hated about the Flash that survived into the Snyder Cut was his, like cyberpunk lair where he has, like, he's living in this trashy warehouse, but he has, like, thousands of dollars worth of like electronics.
He has his own almost mini Batcave.
Yeah, basically.
Can we talk about a Batcave thing for a second?
Yeah, like an actual Batcave thing?
Yeah.
Not the Ezra Miller Batcave?
No, not the Ezra Miller one.
when he's like, it looks like a cave.
Yeah. I do not understand the choice to have 90% of the superhero stuff in this movie take place in a hangar bay, and then like near the end of the movie have them go to the actual Batcave. I was like, the Batcave is like one of the most iconic locations in DC Comics. Why are they just chilling in this Bruce Wayne airplane hangar in like broad daylight? Yeah, but like, okay, then here's my next question. Why is the plane such an important subplot in this movie? And here's my thing. Okay, so you want a transport vehicle for the Justice League that they need to go in the third act. Okay, cool. Fine. It's kind of a dumb inclusion, but whatever.
But also he has access to like private jets and helicopters, but I guess not good enough.
So, but here's my...
Can you imagine them arriving in like an executive helicopter?
Here's my other thing though, is like, so at the end of this movie, at the end of the Snyder Cut, during the epilogue, we like see shots of like Wonder Woman being Wonder Woman, Superman doing the Superman thing, and we get a shot of Batman standing on this like giant bat tank. And that's like the bat tank from The Dark Knight Returns, which is like a really iconic thing. And when they put that shot in there in the epilogue, I was like, why wasn't the thing that they were working on the giant bat tank? Like, because that is like an actual thing from comics, not just like a giant helicraft carrier. But then I was like, okay, well, they have to travel across the ocean. Maybe that's not why it was the bat tank. So there are like, the Justice League does have like iconic like ships that they use in the comics to get places. So why wasn't it like one of the iconic ships? Why was it literally just like a military helicarrier that they were working on in a hangar bay? Like, it just seems like such a weird choice to me, where I'm like, this is a superhero movie, and there's lots of parts in this movie that are very superhero-y and don't shy away from like DC Comics. Like, have them be working in the Batcave. Have them be working on a thing. If this was a Marvel movie, the thing that they would be working on to literally take them into the third act would have been like some kind of cool thing from the comics. Not just a generic like carrier that Cyborg is like, oh, like she wants to fly again. And I'm like, what are you talking? Like, who cares? Like, why is this? Why do we have like 6 lines of dialogue about something that isn't anything? Like,
so you're saying it was like a missed opportunity?
Absolutely.
For a reference?
Yeah, I mean, fucking the old gods show up in this movie. Zeus shows up in this movie.
That took me for a ride. I was
Ares.
like, wait.
Ares, dude. And when they go to Apocalypse, Granny Goodness is there and Desaad, and I'm like, you are doing so much shit from the comics. Why is this just a generic like thing in a generic hangar bay? Like, just it was just such a weird choice to me. I'm like, this is where you decided to pull back, Zach.
I have
after
a reason
3 movies?
for why. It's so Wonder Woman could make one offhanded comment about the love of her life, who flew planes in the military, and how much he would love to fly that ship.
But I mean, even I guess
It was a big plot in Wonder Woman 1984. Was that the year? 84?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, she loves planes.
But like, okay, why didn't they take like the invisible jet? Like, that's a Wonder Woman thing that could have been brought into this movie. I don't know. It's just anything other than just something.
It would have been cool to see the invisible
like
jet.
literally just something from comics, and like all the rest of this movie is a lot of shit from comics. A lot of times in places where it doesn't need to be. So I was like, well, this is one place you could have done it, but you didn't. Anyway.
I see what you're saying. I wasn't as hung up on the plane thing.
I mean, it doesn't listen, it doesn't take you out of the movie. It's not like a bad choice.
It took me right out, honestly.
It's just a weird choice for Zack Snyder, because there is no restraint anywhere else in the Snyder Cut. Like, it is so in your face DC Comics that I was like, to have this not be that is such a weird choice to me.
So are we now over talking about the Justice League? I keep forgetting the name of it despite how much I love it.
Justice League. I think we're like, from here we can talk about this like an amalgamation of like comparison. We're not really like strictly in the theatrical cut.
Just checking, so it was a different page of notes on my note app.
Oh, I see.
I mean, we can talk. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what I was going to say is, like, we should talk about Steppenwolf.
Yeah, I was going to say, too.
And comparing him in both.
Yeah.
Because he went through a major overhaul, I think.
Because Darkseid wasn't in the theatrical cut I saw.
At all.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. Because it was originally going to be like this was going to be the theatrical was going to be a part 1-ish, like Infinity War sort of, and then part 2 I think is when we would have first seen Darkseid.
Yes.
And now apparently the Snyder Cut is still like a part 1,
Of
but
3.
in this part 1 apparently it's like its own little sub trilogy. So we see Darkseid for the first time in this one. Now personally, I didn't think much of Darkseid, and I think his appearance was supposed to be Thanos' end credit appearance in Avengers. It's not supposed to be much now.
Exactly.
And that's fine because Steppenwolf is the actual like villain of this movie. And on the topic of Steppenwolf, oh my god, like I wouldn't call him anything special like historically for like comic book villains, but compared to the nothingness that we got in the theatrical edition, I enjoyed him a lot more in Snyder Cut.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, I totally agree. I think Darkseid in this movie is more just to set up the idea of Darkseid, so that way when he shows up and wrecks shit in his originally planned sequels, that we have some context for him. Mm-hmm. But I love Steppenwolf way more in this movie because he like is there for a reason and has like weird, like not weird in like a
he has a goal.
Yeah, not in like a bad way, but like just like I was like, this is like an interesting character arc for a villain in a movie, because he's basically just being like shit on by the other villains into doing villain things, which I kind of appreciated. I was like, that's kind of interesting. There's like one scene in particular and it's become a meme on the internet, and I'm so happy. I was like, I can't be the only one who noticed this. But when he's talking to Desaad and he's like, hey man, so, I got the mother boxes and looks like we're in good shape. You guys are going to be able to take over Earth soon. So I was just wondering, like, when that happens, do you think maybe I could potentially talk to Darkseid and come home? And then it like cuts to Desaad, and Desaad is like, you still have 50,000 more worlds. And then it cuts back to Steppenwolf, and he just goes, he's just making like a little puppy eye face. He's like,
and it's a lot of worlds, to be fair.
He's like, it was like, it's so funny, but it's also like so sad, and it is decent enough character motivation for him where I was like, okay, I find like he's at some point he screwed up, and now he's being tasked with just going to fucking worlds for the rest of his life and doing this thing. And yeah, I thought it was interesting, and it kept me going through the movie. If we're gonna talk about I guess like the villain stuff, something I want to touch on is actually one of my it's kind of one of my favorite parts in the movie. And I say kind of because there's lots of like execution within it that I don't like, but I like the idea of it, which is the whole like the Age of Heroes flashback of Darkseid showing up to like try to take over Earth. Because, and this is what I was alluding to earlier, when Snyder was talking about recently in an interview with like his whole inspiration with the DC universe, and he was like, look, I love the Marvel movies and I think they're great movies, and when I came in to pitch for DC, I was like, we can't do that because they're already doing that and have done it, and it would be silly to try to do that. And so his interpretation was, we have so many characters that are like godlike, I'd like to do something that's way more like an epic, that's focused on like the more god fantasy elements, and then you can have characters like Batman that are like a backdrop against that. And that really stuck out to me on this rewatch, because that whole Age of Heroes scene felt like something out of Lord of the Rings, and I mean like in a good way. And I really dug it because I love the idea of like Earth having these different armies of protectors, of like the Atlanteans and the Amazonians, and then the guys from like just men, I guess, like Earthlings, and they have to like team up to fight Darkseid, and now Darkseid is coming back, and this is why we have to put a new team together. Like it felt like Fellowship of the Ring a little bit.
Lanterns?
It was like the intro.
Did I get that right? Were there lanterns?
Yes, there was a Green Lantern. And so, but here's my thing though, is that I really like that. I think it's cool villain motivation. It reminds me a lot of Sauron in Lord of the Rings. It's cool hero motivation, because in the theatrical cut of Justice League, Batman's just basically putting the team together because...
Well, because it starts with him knowing about the impending attack.
Yeah,
as
and he's just like...
He finds out after he already tries to get Aquaman on the team for no reason, just to, settle this debt he has
to Superman. But it, like, I understood the whole idea of the team. Now, if I'm gonna come up with one complaint, not just one. We'll talk about something later when we get into like hard. This isn't a hard criticism.
Yeah,
this is just like this is a me like with the ship and the hangar criticism of like I wish you did this a little bit differently. Kind of like how Lord of the Rings, the team that they end up forming, the Fellowship, has like a member from each group. I wish that in this flashback we kind of made explicit that there are like Amazonians and Atlanteans and humans, but also that maybe like at that time the like race of Martians were like on Earth and helping to fight, and then also maybe remember how there's like that Kryptonian scout ship that like was at Earth like thousands of years before.
Yeah.
And there was also maybe some Kryptonians that were on Earth and superpowered, and then
that would have been neat
to me. Oh, and yeah, Green Lanterns, because then for me this movie could have been like exactly like Fellowship of cool, so we need like we have our Amazonian and we have a representative from the Atlantis, and then like Martian Manhunter showing up kind of makes more sense because they're like, oh, like he was like the delegate of like the Martian people, and then this whole thing of like we need to bring Superman back I think would even have a little bit more weight, because again like you're trying to put together the same group of people that like fought against Darkseid originally. Personally, I thought that would have been kind of cool. I still like how it is in the movie, but I kind of would have liked it to be like a bit more Lord of the Rings, like because it's already like 50% Lord of the Rings.
And you know what would have been cool too, and I thought this is what you're gonna like where you're going with it, is like it could have been like Watchmen, where there was a pre-Watchmen team, the Minutemen, and we could have had like a proto Justice League of like an Amazonian, like a representative of each. And that could have like inspired the formation of
kind
the
of
Justice League.
like the Justice Society of America. Like that's a thing in the comics, is that there's like
is it?
Yeah, there's like this thing called like the Justice Society, which was like in olden times. So basically, I don't even. Do I want to explain it? In old comics, in like old comics from like the 40s and 50s.
Did you say in olden times earlier?
In old comics, comics.
He did say that.
There was this team called the Justice Society of characters. But then in like the 80s when they had like the Justice League and DC hadn't decided like do those comics from the 40s and 50s like take place before our like how does the continuity between this work? They had this event called Crisis that like kind of reset everything, and it turns out the Justice Society took place on like a different Earth basically. But it would be that idea, I think, of like what Dan's saying, where in that flashback if we saw like a proto Justice League that was made up of certain delegates, and then like in modern times Bruce is trying to assemble those kind of same delegates to form together to battle Darkseid. I think that would have gone like full Lord of the Rings instead of like almost Lord of the Rings, but we're kind of still holding back because I like that scene. Otherwise I think it's a cool part of the movie.
Yeah, so, it's fun.
Yeah,
and you're right, it also reminded me of Cate Blanchett's like narration introduction of Fellowship of the Ring, where you're seeing like the Elrond and like Sauron, like the elves and the men working together. It's like, yeah.
Okay, this is really random, but I do have a note about that particular scene that says Diana's delivery when she lists all the groups who fought Darkseid in the past reminds me of when the teacher made us read things aloud in class that we hadn't seen before, because after every point it seemed like she thought the list would be over. She just read it with a really weird intonation and pause after each one. I know it's the most nitpicky thing, but this is my version of Marco's airplane rant.
Yeah. To be fair, her entire voiceover in the scene, I think, was recorded at some point long after the movie. I think they maybe rewrote it and had her come in for reshoots or something. I don't know. It seems like she was like checked out doing this voiceover. I don't know what it was. I don't know. But it, I was just kind of like,
maybe Atlanteans.
Yeah. I was like, maybe she can just stop talking. Maybe we can just like see the thing happen. I don't need all this voice. Like I did have Lord of the Rings vibes, but I was like, it's not delivered great, so maybe we can just like see it.
It did look cool and the idea is cool, although definitely Ares and Zeus, because she just casually that came up and I was like, oh yeah, no, for sure, gods, I guess like we have aliens and stuff, but it was so random.
I mean, that's what the whole like Amazonian culture is based on, but it was funny to like see them there. Like,
that wasn't as jarring to me though, because like if you go over to the MCU, like Thor is a character based off of like a religion.
I guess, but in this they were
deity.
literally just like giant people. Like they were extra large. Thor at
Were
least
they?
is normal
I didn't
human
even
size.
realize that.
I think they were supposed to be like extra large. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch that then. I didn't catch the scaling of them.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's something we'll talk about later when I talk about Zack Snyder's visual his style, because I have some thoughts and gripes and about Zacky boy. Something I want to touch on, if we're kind of talking about like the villains and Steppenwolf in general, is how improved I think the ending of this movie is.
Yeah.
Because, well, it's related to Steppenwolf, but you know, one of the biggest problems I remember Dan and I talking about with the Justice League is that Superman shows up and then there's nothing for the rest of the League to do, and he just single-handedly saves the day by himself, and then the movie ends. And I really appreciate in this that Superman showing up felt like here's the thing, there was enough going on in the plot of like Darkseid trying to open this portal to get to Earth and whatnot, that everyone was doing something, and it just kind of felt like they were failing because none of them could really like outmatch Steppenwolf. So then when Superman shows up, it feels more like the addition that the team was missing for him to be this physical presence to like fuck up Steppenwolf, which he does and is awesome. But I didn't feel like, oh, Superman just saved the day. Like Superman
It wasn't
came,
an automatic win.
no,
Did
he came and
blow
he did.
an axe to pieces? I had a note about that. Did that really happen, or did
He
I make
throws
that
it.
up?
He has
is-
like
he is frozen,
frostbite.
right? Yeah.
Okay, that
Yeah.
makes
And he
so
shattered
much
it.
more sense.
Which was cool. Cool use of his powers. This fight has some cool use of his powers.
Yeah.
Because he stops the thing. Also, okay, I do have to say, though, neither of these movies have a good introduction to Superman in the fight. They're both really bad.
Well, it's
in
the
Justice
same
League,
one. In
no,
the final
no.
fight.
No.
In Justice League,
Yeah.
he shows up and he
I
says,
thought you meant in the fight where he fights the Justice League.
Oh, no.
That's
Sorry.
what I was saying.
That fight's great. We'll talk about
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But in the final fight, when Superman shows up in a Superman costume, in Justice League, he has the line, I'm a big fan of truth. No. I'm a big fan of truth. I'm something about truth and justice. I don't know. I don't even know the
Yeah,
line.
it's really cheesy.
I'm a fan of truth. I'm also a big fan of justice.
But, like-
and then he like just punches him in the face, and you're like, oh, okay.
And like full disclaimer, we've talked about how that tone, like that, we want that from Superman, sort of, but it's just like Henry Cavill's horrible delivery of that line. I laugh
know.
every time.
And also, like, I think the biggest problem is because none of the rest of the universe is that tone, that when he does it, you're like, I'm sorry, what? What did you just say? Like this dude that
And his like
snaps
his
out his neck.
CGI
Yeah.
lip,
Ugh.
and it's like all of it working together.
So weird.
It's bad.
But then in this movie, I was so excited to see what the actual line is, and in this movie, he just drops down and says, "Not impressed," and I was like,
yeah,
how the hell? Like,
It's still
I was
not
like,
great.
Zach, you were given $70 million to do any reshoots you needed to for the Snyder Cut. You couldn't like come up with one better one-liner than that to put in that scene. Nothing. There was nothing you could think of. I was like, ugh, like what?
It was. I mean, that was better for me though. Like that wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't hard.
It
to
wasn't
do better
as-
than that.
Yeah, I mean, it was better.
Good point.
But
Good
yeah,
point.
I still was just kind of like, I want Superman to do something, say something cool. Like, just say,
Yeah, I get it.
like, what was he not impressed about? Like, that's the thing. It's like, I don't understand. Like what? Like, what? It would, like, it's not like, you know, I have to say, like, the truth justice line is lame, but at least, like, Steppenwolf said something like, now you will, like, find out the
He set it up.
truth. And then Superman is like, oh, I'm a big fan of truth. I'm also a fan of justice. In this, nothing. Cyborg is just trying to disconnect the thing, and Steppenwolf is like, and then Superman just goes, not impressed. And I was like, was there a line cut somewhere about someone being impressed about something? Like, I don't know. I don't understand it.
Fair point. But beyond that, the scene after that continues to be pretty cool
Yes.
and much better than what we get in the theatrical.
Yeah.
He doesn't he chop off one of Steppenwolf's, what would you call those, like antlers?
Yeah, he uses his heat vision.
It's him that does it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It's cool,
You're
and that's what I'm saying. Cool use of his powers. He uses his freeze breath. He flies around, punches him, and then pins him down, and uses his heat vision to do the thing. And I was like, yeah, okay, this is. But again, he didn't save the day. Like he beat Steppenwolf, but ultimately, Cyborg still had to do his thing, and you know,
and then Wonder Woman beheads
Wonder
him
Woman
in
gets
front
to
of
behead.
all the other
Yeah,
characters.
Batman honestly wasn't doing much, But that's always the problem with Batman
He
in Justice
distracted
League.
the parademons at the beginning.
Yeah.
He saved Flash.
Yeah, true. And then Flash gets to have his little hero moment to save the day. Although, I don't know who he was talking to when he was doing his little run. I don't know why he was talking to his dad. I was very confused by that, because his dad can't hear him. So I was like...
Maybe he thought it would reach him somehow, someday. Maybe he's spiritual. Maybe he thought he could hear it in his mind. Who knows?
That was another thing where I was like, maybe this should have just been in silence. Maybe we should have just heard some cool music.
Yeah,
Personally, because
I think he was...
Yeah.
He probably thought he was going to die, so he's just, like, being retrospective.
Oh, also the music. The score was by two entirely different people for theatrical versus the Snyder cut.
I'm glad you brought this up. I have a
Yeah.
lot of music facts that I want to talk about. I have a lot
I don't
of tea
have
that I need to
facts.
spill.
I have a general comment that I hated almost every song that Snyder put in this film.
Yes.
Oh,
Me
yeah.
too.
That
That is the one
He has a
thing
horrible taste.
where I was like, okay, in general, movie fine, vision fine, I get it. But just every time there was a song, and if you like listen to the lyrics, they were like too cheesily on point, and I was like, what?
And the
fuck are you doing?
performances. Like, he chose covers, like, with horrible
Yes.
performances. I will stand by that. The music choices in this movie
Yeah,
are
that is one
bad.
thing where you had that much money to play around with, and you still chose what you chose. Okay.
I absolutely agree. And I also think... So this... It's scored by two different people. The theatrical cut, they brought in Danny Elfman to score it, who, composer supreme. He did all the music for Nightmare Before Christmas. He did the Sam Raimi Spider-Man theme. He did the Batman 1989 theme. And in that movie, they, for some reason, used the Batman 1989 theme, and they also used the Chris Reeves Superman theme. And I love those. Like, I think those are still my favorite, like, themes for those characters. But it was weird, because I was like, why am I... Like, this is weird. Like, when Superman shows up and it's a Chris Reeves theme, I was like, this is not this Superman, though. Like, this is a weird music choice. And same with Batman. Now, one positive I have to say, because I also agree, in the Zack Snyder cut, all the actual, like, songs are horrendously chosen. Let's put a pin in that.
Not the score, like
Yeah,
the
I want to
tracks.
talk about the score, but we need to
Yeah.
put in the pin in the songs, because there is something in particular I need to talk to you guys about. I really need to talk to you guys.
I'm excited.
Okay.
Sorry.
I liked the... Here's what I'll say. I like the music cues to Man of Steel. And there are two. There's one when they're kind of talking around, they're talking about the mother boxes, and they're like, look, like, the mother box is a change machine. Like, a match, anything can, like, a match can burn down a house, but, like, a mother box could, like, whatever. I forget the metaphor. Who cares?
It can rebuild the house from the ashes.
And they all kind of go, oh, do you think what I'm thinking? And then there's, like a holographic projection of Superman, and then they play they have the Man of Steel like music cue. Well, they're all kind of like, yeah, we got to bring Superman back. And I legitimately, I don't know why, but I kind of had like a oh fuck, let's go moment where I was like, wait a minute.
Me
I was
too.
like, wait, no. I was like, you can't do this, Marco. Like, this is not. It's still not great, but it like tricked me into being excited for some reason that they were gonna bring Superman back. The
Even though
other
you
one,
knew they were going to bring Superman back.
I
'cause you
knew,
saw
but it
the movie.
like it helped with the drastic, like in
Yeah.
theatrical, it was so drastic when they cut to digging up his
Yeah.
grave, and that happens in the Snyder cut, but it's so much more. Like, I'm behind it so much more in the Snyder cut because of their decision.
Absolutely.
Process.
Absolutely. And then the other one is when Superman shows up and after he delivers the god-awful not impressed and then starts beating up Steppenwolf, they play the Superman's first flight music from Man of Steel.
Yeah.
Which
yeah.
got me really hyped to like hear that again, but to hear that in an action context, because that was probably my favorite piece of music from Man of Steel. And also like in Man of Steel, obviously that's his first time being Superman, and then in this movie it's his like rebirth as Superman. We don't actually get it like when we get the direct imagery to Man of Steel where he flies for the first time, which I was like, that's tasteful. I was fully expecting that music to show up there, and I was kind of glad that it didn't. I was like, okay, that's kind of tasteful. But then they play it when Superman's beating up Steppenwolf, and I was happy about that. That being said, I think the rest of the score in this movie is god-awful. I think there is not one piece of music in this movie that feels iconic to any character. I don't know what Cyborg's theme is. I don't know what the Flash's theme is.
I really like Wonder Woman's music. I will interject.
I was going to say,
Sure, but also
there's a couple instances for
Wonder Woman's
Woman's
music
score, yeah.
was established earlier. Except for now they've added this weird
Superman's.
Yeah, no, but that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, Wonder Woman's is good, but it just sucked, and like none of the individual characters really had a theme, and then the Justice League didn't like have a theme, and that kind of sucks. And it sucks especially because in the DC animated Justice League universe, the theme song for that show is like this really iconic piece of music, like this really awesome like score that everyone just kind of universally agrees like, wow, this is an awesome Justice League score. And the intro to that show starts with like the sun rising, and you see like silhouetted the Justice League members like walking towards the camera,
like in Apocalypse
like
Now.
while the music. Yeah. Oh my god, like Apocalypse Now. Listen to our Q&A episode, but
Yeah.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it in this. But and this music starts to play, and then you get like an introduction with all of them, and it's a really cool piece of music. And there's the scene in this movie at the end where the whole league is just standing like in a line on top of the building, and I was like, guys, like you couldn't have even used
a Justice League theme there.
Just use that cue from that. Like I was thinking about the MCU Spider-Man, like Spider-Man Homecoming, and I was so down on like Spider-Man reboots at this point. I was like, I'm done. And then also, I mean, he was fine in Civil War, but I was like, I don't know if I need like individual Spider-Man movies anymore. But then like the first thing you get in that movie is the 1960s Spider-Man theme, but like redone with like an orchestra over the Marvel logo. And immediately I was like, okay, cool, I'm in, thank you. Like that was it's just one of those things where it's like it goes such a long way of just this little musical thing. And even if none of the characters in this movie had iconic themes, like they could have just used that Justice League music in that moment when the Justice League is finally the Justice League. And I would have like, it would have gone such a long way for me to forgiving the score in this movie, which is so bland otherwise.
And to make another comparison to Marvel, like the Avengers theme is so iconic at this point. Like you really need that for the Justice League.
Absolutely, dude. It's like the team has finally got together, and I couldn't even hum to you what the score is playing in that scene because it's nothing. It's just like generic movie score. I don't know. It's such a wasted opportunity. Now, the thing that I wanted to put a pin in that we have to talk about, because I was shocked. I was actually shocked when I was watching the movie, is Bruce Wayne goes to visit Aquaman. They have a conversation. Aquaman leaves, takes his shirt off, gets into the water.
Takes his sweater off.
And then a bunch of female people from this town are standing there, and one of them starts singing a little folk song, and I was like, okay, we're probably going to cut away. And then someone behind her starts harmonizing, and I was like, oh no.
Not cutting away.
And then we proceed to listen to like an entire 3 minutes of a folk song in another language, while the first girl that started singing grabs Aquaman's sweater and starts smelling it. Mm-hmm. And Bruce Wayne just kind of stands there, and that was a choice that this movie made.
I think it's because it's set in Iceland and they are already like so into fairies. I don't want to like shit on their lore or anything. I love that for them. But, they already believe in fairies. Now they have this godlike creature coming out of the ocean to literally save them all the time and make sure they have enough to eat and whatever. That if they build houses for fairies all over, they're gonna sing folk songs for this man while smelling his sweater.
Sure.
But
no,
also,
that's fine.
Super unnecessary in this film. Like I that's what I'm saying is maybe the thought. I still think, was it needed in this 4-hour film? No, definitely not.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dan kind of touched on this before about this being like Zack's, his like vision of Justice League. I think something important to point out though is that had the tragedy not happened, had Zack gotten the opportunity to finish this movie, I don't think this is the actual final cut of the movie that we would have seen. I think this is the director's cut of whatever the actual Zack Snyder's Justice League would have come out in 2017.
Well,
because I cannot imagine, like, there are so many scenes in this movie that go on for just too long, where I'm like, we're seeing all the footage that you shot here. Like, point in case, the scene starts with the movie starts with Superman's death and then Superman's yell that awakens the mother boxes. And my God, do we see this yell? I mean, it goes on for like minutes of just this yell going through.
I really like that scene.
I don't mind the scene, but again, it's just like, I'm like, if this was like edited to be an actual theatrically released movie, we would have like gone a bit quicker between the different locations, like, or with the singing scene, or even with Flash saving Iris and like how long he stands there and he's fucking moving the hot dog, and I'm like, oh my, like there's so many times where I'm like, Zach, I know this is like you get to do whatever the fuck you want. But just a little bit of restraint. IGN compiled an article of the total runtime of slow-mo in this movie. Do you want to know how much it was?
Like 2 hours?
No, I mean, it was half an hour. There was actually a half-hour slow motion in this movie. Like, this movie could have been 3.5 hours instead of 4 if you just remove the slow motion.
That's a point that I wanted to bring up, like, specifically. Yeah. I totally agree with the slow motion. In a 4-hour movie, like, yeah, you can take out anything to make it shorter. Like, the slow motion would be the first thing. In terms of like the extended shots, that like the points that both of you make like really good points. But my argument, and I'm gonna throw it back to our very first episode.
Oh boy.
Lord of the Rings extended editions. This, for me, this might just be my opinion, it was very much like that, where it's like there's the theatrical versions, but the extended editions basically like each scene is like expanded a little bit, and I was okay with the movie taking its time on things. I'll agree there's a couple scenes where maybe it just objectively goes on for way longer than we need to see, like with that singing scene. Yeah, they could have cut away for sure. But in general, and Carolina mentioned this at the beginning, like pacing generally wasn't really an issue, maybe a little bit in the middle, but like it didn't feel necessarily like 4 hours. And that's always a good sign. When your movie doesn't feel its runtime, that's always like, that's great. That's what you want to strive for. And much like the extended editions of the Lord of the Rings movies, those to me never feel like 4 hours, 4.5 hours. And this movie was, in terms of its runtime, it was easy to ingest for me, despite a lot of expanded scenes like we've been talking about.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the one that really stands out to me most is just that singing scene, because I was like, when she started harmonizing, I was like, oh my God, like what are we doing here? Is this a concert? But I like in general, I think I am fine with him taking his time with scenes and stuff. I mean, he has the opportunity to do it. Why not? Like why leave anything out at this point if it helps build to what he's got to build to? And you're right. I didn't like when this movie got to the epilogue, I was like, oh shit, like we're done. Like it didn't feel like, I really thought I was gonna have to watch this in multiple chunks, and I didn't for the most part, other than to like grab food at one point. And
we will talk about the epilogues like on its own in a second.
Yeah.
But next I want to segue into the chapters.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And I know Marco specifically has something to say about that. But like, okay, on the topic of this movie, okay, for anyone who doesn't know, this movie is split into 6 chapters and an epilogue, right? Or is it intro, 6 chapters?
Epilogue.
6 parts epilogue.
Okay. I very much appreciate that stylistic decision. I like that a lot.
It's because they were gonna release it as 6 like episodes, kind of.
Yes.
At one point, that was flown around.
That bridges into what I was gonna say, where it was like I said, appreciate the stylistic decision, but the chapters themselves, not the chapter titles, the actual chapters don't seem to warrant the thematic division. Like there's no thematic differences between chapters. I feel like it's just like, let's put a chapter title here because like maybe they want to take a break and go get a snack or something. But the thing is, when you release your movie on streaming, you can pause it literally wherever you want. And also I was going to suggest, why not, if you're going to do streaming, make it a miniseries. And then Carolina, you just said that was news to me. It was originally supposed to be a miniseries. I think that would have been better than just pointlessly dividing your 4-hour movie into chapters.
Well, that was also my thing. I thought for sure that the purpose of dividing it into chapters would be to kind of introduce one member of the Justice League in each chapter, because in the first one you only really saw Aquaman. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. And then they didn't do that at all.
6 chapters,
and I was like,
6
okay.
Justice League members.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
think
didn't
it
know
was.
there were 6 chapters going into it, in my defense. I was just like, maybe this is just how it's split up. And
I think it
wasn't.
was, like Carol's saying, just a holdover from they were originally going to put it on streaming.
And those probably would have been the episode titles.
Yeah, I believe so. I have to say, like, I didn't mind, the chapter breaks, but I'm with you, Dan. Like, after the first couple, I was like, why are we doing this? Like, it doesn't really change anything, especially, like, in particular, like, the Age of Heroes ones really stood out to me because the title card comes up, like, Age of Heroes. And then we don't get the Age of Heroes thing until the end of the chapter. Like, the last thing we see in that chapter is the flashback, and then Wonder Woman saying the Age of Heroes has to come again, and then we go to the next chapter.
It's like the titles could have been placed like anywhere, and just this kind of vaguely dropped them in.
And then another, this is such a Marco nitpick, but another thing that kind of made me annoyed is that I really feel as though, and I'm sure that the movie was made first, and then they pulled the chapter cards after, but like every title card is like a line of dialogue from the movie, and that for some reason made me irrationally angry. In particular, the one all the king's
they're
horses.
all lines of dialogue from the movie?
I'm pretty sure. Like, well, I know
so,
Age of Heroes is, but the one that made me like,
and don't count on it, Batman.
Don't count on it, Batman. That one is the one that made me really angry. Was all the king's horses, because that chapter starts and Bruce is talking to Alfred about how like they need to bring Superman back, and Alfred says, well, all the king's horses and all the king's men, and then Bruce is just like, shut up, like whatever. I don't know what he says, but that's like, that really stood out to me, where I was like what is, like, why?
It feels like they wrote the line of dialogue for the chapter.
Yes, I was like, you don't need to have the chapter title in a line of dialogue. I get the reference. I get the Humpty Dumpty reference. I get that this is the chapter about bringing Superman back from the dead. But like, to have Alfred actually start saying that, to me, I was like, that might have
been a reshoot, like a
we've
last
got
minute reshoot.
I think it was. It has to have been, right? It felt so out of place to me, where I specifically made a note about it, and I was like, why would he say that? No one would ever say that. You would just say, this is a bad idea. Like, why would you say all the king's horses and all the king's, like, why would Alfred say that to 60-year-old Bruce Wayne alcoholic who is like,
okay, he's not
just
60.
wants to die? Yeah, I know, but you know what I mean.
He's 50.
He's 50.
It's a big difference.
So Alfred was 10 when he started looking after him.
Yeah, this Alfred was, yeah. Yeah, and also the title cards, like Dan's pointed out. I mean, also, like, we haven't even talked about it, but like the aspect ratio in this movie is 4:3 because
to preserve
another
Zack
thing that I
Snyder's
appreciated
vision.
stylistically.
I'm very confused about this.
Now I realize like it wasn't originally 4:3, and it kind of screws up a little bit of the framing. But to see like a major release like this purposely chosen to be like, I want to make this 4:3 because it calls upon, like, you know, old TV. I think so. I think, and that's something that I liked.
If we had
TV,
HBO Max, we could also watch it in black and white.
Yeah,
because that's originally how he screened it to people before he knew he was going to be able to actually make it.
Huh.
Yeah, it's on there now in black and white, so you can watch it. Yeah, the other thing Dan was referring to about my one specific point, because believe it or not, All the King's Horses wasn't my one specific point, even though that seemed like it should be.
No.
Because that's such a specific point.
I mean, that is the point you said, so I did assume it was the point you were referring to.
It's just the Frasier thing. I mean, this thing has chapter breaks, and it's in 4:3, and it just reminded me a lot of Frasier, except not always the quality, but, you know. Yeah, I just could not help but, like, think about Frasier. Especially, like, I went and watched Frasier after, and that's when I was like, oh my god. Like, this is literally like Frasier. I can't believe that they did it like this. But, yeah, ultimately, I have to say, like, whether it's the chapter breaks or the aspect ratio, I'm with you, Dan. Like, I think it's his stylistic choice, and it never took me out of the movie in a bad way. So,
no.
Whatever. Like, if he...
Except for that one Alfred line.
Except for that one Alfred run. But other than that, I was like, you know what? If this makes you happy, Zach, more power to you. I'm glad you get to make your movie the way you want to make it. So...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that epilogue now?
Oh boy. Okay, first
listen.
of all, before we get into anything, I'm so happy that you mentioned Martian Manhunter in the last episode.
Yeah.
And this isn't, like, this is about the epilogue, but also about a scene earlier when the Martian Manhunter visits Lois as Martha, Because if you didn't tell me when Martha I put quotes. I know you can't see them. When Martha walks out of the apartment building and her eyes turn red and she turns into this robot person with a cape, my notes are just like all caps, like, hold on. What just happened? And then I was like, okay, this is the Martian Manhunter thing Marco mentioned. But if you didn't, that would have messed with my brain so much. So I was like, wait, is Martha evil? Is Martha dead? So confusing.
Yeah.
But you were right, Marco. It was the military captain
General Swanwick.
Or whatever. General.
Yep.
Whether or not that was a post-BVS decision or pre. We'll
If you
know.
ask me, Dan, I'm going to say it's a post-previous decision.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, but sorry, now into the actual epilogue.
We're going to get into it.
Sorry for derailing.
Yeah, we're going to get into it with this epilogue.
Yeah, well...
But that was very much shoehorned in.
Very much. And I think especially the epilogue scene more than the other one. So the other one felt fine, kind of, if you knew who Martian Manhunter was. If you didn't...
Actually, sorry to interrupt, but it almost feels like the epilogue scene was filmed first, and then they went back and added the other one in for, like, setup.
It's funny you say that. It's actually the other way around.
Oh, is that...
Yeah, I have some facts about the epilogue, actually, that I'm going to share with you guys. It's pretty funny. But, yeah, so let's talk about the first scene more. So the first scene, Martian Manhunter as Martha. Something I did appreciate, I have to say, is that I like that Diane Lane was doing, like, a really thick Southern accent. I don't know if you guys noticed, but she doesn't actually sound like how Martha sounds. She sounds way more Southern, and I was kind of like, oh, did she just forget? Like,
it's been too long.
Does she not care anymore? Because I wouldn't blame her. I'd be like, she's talking to Amy Adams, who doesn't care anymore, and whatever. But then when it was revealed to be Martian Manhunter, I was like, oh, okay, that's cool, kind of. Like, if you're me and know who that is, then that's cool that, like, he was masquerading as this person, didn't quite get the accent right. I don't know why Lois didn't notice that the accent was off. I don't know why Lois was like, hey, why don't you sound like you do?
She was in such grief that she wasn't even going to work. I don't blame her.
I guess. Oh my god. Guys, something else we have to talk about before we get to the epilogue. You know the guy that is in, like, 10 scenes in this movie that Lois brings coffee to? The cop?
The cop freaking bringing coffee to cops. Come on, Lois.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That guy, that actor, is the actor that played Jimmy Olsen in Superman 1978. Which means that Zack Snyder, I think, felt so bad about ruining Jimmy Olsen in Batman vs. Superman that he was like, shit, I should probably do something here for Superman fans, because I think I kind of pissed a lot of them off. So... that whole
that's
cool.
That made me happy. I was like, nice to see him there. Nice to see Zach acknowledging this character. Okay, so let's get to the epilogue. So here are my facts for the epilogue. So if you couldn't tell, which I'm sure you could tell, the entire epilogue was reshot when Zach was given his $70 million to finish.
Yeah, it's probably where most of the reshoots
in October 2020.
Yes. Here are some
long,
easy ways to figure that out. First of all, Ben Affleck looks about 40 pounds thinner, because he lost all his Batman weight and has lost a lot of weight and just looks pretty healthy.
Oh, you mean in the Martian Manhunter?
Yeah, in the Martian Manhunter scene. In that scene, this is the point I wanted to make, they didn't know who he was going to be talking to, so they just filmed Ben Affleck's side of the scene. Because Zach...
Was it going to be Green
Zach
Lantern
really wanted it to be a Green Lantern. And WB was like, no. And Zach was like, why not? And they were like, no. And they fought about it, and then Zach was like, fuck it, I guess we'll just have
that actually would have been good. Because they actually brought up Green Lantern.
But that doesn't make sense
because
to
then
me
why was
now,
Martian Manhunter at the beginning of the movie?
Wow,
that
exactly. They could have taken out. You could have just not explained the heavy Southern accent and then just not had a transforming scene in the hallway.
It just doesn't make sense that was shot then before that epilogue part. I would have thought the other way around.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I'm kind of flabbergasted by that as well. But that was that. And then the other main epilogue thing that we have to talk about is...
the 20-minute
scene. Favorite character!
So we, of course, have another flash forward to the Apocalypse timeline that we're never going to see, unfortunately. No. And I get now, knowing now that Zach had this, like, 5-movie thing in his head, and, like, how, like I think I think if we had seen everything, like these seeds would have been, would have made sense and been fun. But like,
I still don't think we needed to see any of it in Batman versus Superman.
Not in Batman
my
versus
opinion.
Superman. No. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No,
I also don't think it belongs in this. To be honest, it's
well.
so.
So here's what I'll say. I
you
didn't like it
the
in
trilogy,
the
though.
epilogue.
I get it. Like in the epilogue, at least.
I didn't like it in the epilogue. I actually liked it when they were bringing Superman back to life and Cyborg was showing the Vision by the mother box.
That just
that was
confused
cool.
the hell out of me.
See, I dug that because it was the mother box being like, this is what's going to happen if you bring this guy back to life. And what's going to happen is Darkseid is going to kill Lois Lane and then Superman's going to turn evil. And I was like, oh, that's cool.
See, I didn't get that was a message from the mother box. I thought that, that actually was happening now, but then the Flash reversing time undid it. I mean, which I guess is not really what happened, but I was like, I don't understand. Because it happened, it showed us the Vision, and then it was over, and everything was normal.
They could have conveyed it better.
They could have conveyed it better.
But I thought that was a fun Marvel-ish thing.
That to me was like, this is a cool way to set up what you want to do in future movies.
Yeah.
But like Stan's saying, I do think it could have been executed better. And I'm with you, Carol. When that first happened, I was like, oh my god, are we just cutting to the future where this all happened and now the rest of the movie is going to be in this timeline?
Yeah, it was just really jarring, I think.
I was kind of excited though, because I was like, is this the Snyder Cut? Like, is there like a whole other back half of this movie? Yeah, I was like, that's so cool. It wasn't. It was just a vision. But I was fine with the vision. Eventually. I hated the epilogue scene. I hated it.
Yeah.
And something that's really funny is that they literally just got everyone together in costumes and shot the scene in Zack Snyder's backyard. I don't know if you guys...
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah. Because they didn't have
they
a
hung
set.
out.
They didn't have anywhere to shoot, so they just shot in Zack Snyder's backyard. I thought the scene was lame. I thought it didn't add anything to this storyline that we didn't already know. Like, the Cyborg flashback gave us everything, or flash forward, gave us everything that we need to know.
Yeah.
And then this scene was just an excuse to have Batman and the Joker talk, and in maybe one of the worst Batman-Joker conversations I've ever seen on film, where the Joker insinuates he's going to jerk Batman off at one point.
But they mentioned your Robin killing thing.
Yeah, but also,
But, why?
Yeah, why? And who cares at this point? At this point, who cares? Why bother?
And, okay, here's my biggest problem with this scene between Batman, Joker, and Deathstroke.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's also in this
Deathstroke,
scene.
yeah.
Batman in this universe has never, well, not never, but, almost never been seen on screen with Joker in this universe. And he has literally never before been seen with Deathstroke. So him sharing a scene with two of his most famous and loved villains means nothing to someone who doesn't have the back. If you're going in blind, if somehow you don't know who the Joker is and his dichotomy with Batman, what does this scene mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, Dan.
But
that
I
they're
think
working
people are
together.
assuming that there's no one on planet Earth who doesn't know.
Okay, maybe not Joker, but what about Deathstroke?
Yeah.
Because them working together, it shouldn't strike anything for someone who is only following these movies, because that has not
especially
it hasn't been set up.
You were just introduced to him talking to Lex Luthor, and so you understand that he's probably not a good guy. But then you see them working together, and it's just all confusion.
It's what? What's happening?
Yeah. And I mean, I would argue, even as someone that does understand the Batman and Joker, when they were hanging out in that scene, I was like, this does nothing. It doesn't even do anything for me as a fan of that, because I think
because Jared Leto sucks as the Joker.
mean, we can talk about Jared Leto, but there are so many cool ways to do stories of Batman and Joker having to team up, and there have been such cool versions of that. Even just recently, Scott Snyder, famous DC comic book writer, did one called Last Night on Earth. Yeah, Snyder, the good Snyder. This to me was just kind of disappointing, because I don't know exactly, we don't know, obviously Superman's bad, but we don't know exactly why are they teaming up. What is their purpose of working together? And then outside of that,
the epilogue to start intrigue for the next two movies where that's explained that are never happening.
And they're never going to happen. But also, even if they did happen, there's not enough drama there that I care about, and so it just...
Because we didn't have a quintessential Batman story where he faces the Joker as a villain.
And we didn't see the whole death of Robin thing. So when Joker brings it up, And in Batman vs Superman, it's not even explicit that this is his motivation for things. So when he brings it up here, it was just kind of like, well, I get it, because I was explaining it to everyone, but like nobody else knew. So like, why this doesn't mean anything? And then we just get such weird lines about like, oh, bats, like who's gonna give you a reach around? And I was like, that's weird. And then also Batman's like, so when I kill you, and make no mistake, I will fucking kill you. And I was like, Zach, I was like, dude. I was literally, these were my actual thoughts when Batman said that. I was like, Zach, I was so ready to just get on this podcast and be so positive about you and how you finally get to do something in your own vision. And then you just have to go and write like a 12-year-old's idea of a Batman Joker scene and Batman being like, I'm gonna fucking kill you. And I was like, why? Like, what does this do for anyone? Like, hearing Batman say, I'm gonna fucking kill you. Like, did anyone get hype at that? Like, I'm trying to imagine someone seeing that and then, like, being excited and not just, like, laughing. Because I audibly, like, laughed out loud when Batman said that line.
And another problem with this scene is it's too, like, this is end credit material, but it's 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like, what? It's 20 minutes,
30
right?
minutes almost.
That's way too long to be an end credit scene. Yeah, so for the record, I mean, and in my intro I said I was pretty astounded by this movie. That, like, a little asterisk there, it's like everything before this epilogue chapter. The first six chapters.
Yeah.
I did like the part of the
Minus the
epilogue where Cyborg, like, is actually finally listening to the message his father left.
Yes.
And then it all goes bad. But that was nice.
I like that too.
Is that in this
Yeah.
chapter?
It's right at the start.
I guess this chapter
Yeah.
starts. Yeah.
I'll say this, actually. This chapter starts with, we get a quick moment with each of the characters. We get the Superman thing, like taking his shirt, like the Chris Reeve thing. We get Cyborg listening to the message. We get Barry Allen becoming a scientist, which, it doesn't make sense with his origin, but whatever. At least it's a Barry Allen thing. We get Batman on the Dark Knight Returns tank. We get something with Wonder Woman. I don't remember what it was, honestly. Unfortunately, I don't remember what it
Aquaman's
was.
going to see his dad.
Aquaman's going to see his dad. Yeah. So I kind of felt it reminded me.
Do we have something with Wonder Woman? I don't have anything
we had
in my
something.
notes.
I'm sure
we do, but
There's
I
gotta
also
be
don't
one
really
of
have
each.
anything about it. But I have something about everyone else.
It reminded me of, like, at the end of the first Avengers movie when, like, Tony and Bruce, like, drive off in a car together and Steve, like, rides off on his motorcycle and Thor takes Loki back to Asgard. It was just that thing of, like, oh, cool.
And Nick Fury narrates.
Yeah,
over
like,
all of it.
they've teamed up.
Yeah.
Now they're going their separate ways and they're going back to doing their hero things. I thought it was cool.
But they'll be back.
But then we cut to, Jesse Eisenberg and Magic Mike on a boat. And then...
Deathstroke is visiting Lex Luthor, who is on a boat. Oh, Joe Manganiello from Magic Mike?
Yeah.
Also Flash from Spider-Man.
Oh my god,
2002.
Flash Thompson from Spider-Man 2002.
Really?
Wouldn't want to fight me neither.
Oh my god.
um,
Yeah, I saw that, sorry.
and then, then we cut to the dumb epilogue, and then we cut to
Another dumb epilogue.
just clearly different, like 4 years later, Ben Affleck having a conversation with, as we know, was just nothing, that they just like, edited around. And then also, another like thing I want to make fun of in this scene is he says, like, what is, like, people will call you? And then, like, the scene happens, and then he says, oh, by the way, like, people call me the Martian Manhunter.
That was kind of cringy.
His name isn't the Martian Manhunter. That's his, like, superhero name. Like, his name is John Jones. That's, like, that's his given name. It's John Jones. Like, Martian Manhunter is his but, like, he's not being a superhero. Who would call him the Martian Man? Like, just, again, like with the fucking ship in the hangar, he should have said, people call me John Jones, and then flown away. And then people would have been like, yeah. It's like with Scarlet Witch, like how, like, recently in WandaVision, and whatever, if you haven't seen WandaVision yet, grow up. Like, it's been on TV for a long time. But, like, recently in WandaVision, they finally called her the Scarlet Witch. Like, I would have liked...
For, like, the first time.
I would have liked
ever.
to have seen him just be like, yeah, this is who I am. And then maybe in the Justice League sequel, he, like, becomes the hero, the Martian Manhunter. But...
Or, you know what else would have made sense? Is if you're keeping the fact that he refers to himself as Martian Manhunter, if you see him in that Age of Gods flashback.
Absolutely. Yep, that would have...
He was Martian Manhunter.
That would have been a lot better, too. But in this movie, it's like he clearly just hasn't been Martian Manhunter. Because in Batman vs. Superman, he's in, like, the room when the president decides to fire a nuke at Doomsday, and he does nothing. So I'm like, okay, you're clearly not being a superhero, so who's calling you the Martian Manhunter? I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a point, but you should finish your point because my point's going to derail us.
All I was going to say is that this entire epilogue to me was Batman vs. Superman vibes. Where, like, like the rest of this movie almost felt like a different movie from Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman. Where I was like, this is okay. Like, okay, we're doing the thing. We're doing the thing. And then this epilogue happened, and I was like, Zach, like, why? Why did you have to just put more of your Batman vs. Superman bullshit in this movie? Anyway, that's all I was going to say.
And I was going to say, because you mentioned nukes, in this film, because they do more backstory with Cyborg and talk more about what he can do. At one point it's mentioned he can launch all of the world's nukes with just a thought.
Yes.
And the fact that that was never brought up as a way to maybe defeat this super strong alien being who they've been trying to fight this whole time is wild to me. Also, especially because in the Age of Heroes battle, essentially Darkseid was just, I mean, sure, cut by gods, but, you know, like, essentially kind of stabbed to death. Like, it shows they're not invincible. So in theory, if they could just pin him down. But also at the same time, I kind of had a pet peeve because in that Age of Heroes battle, he was just kind of stabbed a bunch. And then now in this timeline, Steppenwolf, when he had hundreds of Amazon warriors shooting arrows at him, he managed to disappear before that happened. And he's supposed to be less powerful than Darkseid. Just nitpicky things. But I was like, why are they having so much trouble even hurting him a little bit?
Yeah, and I think it's actually been a common complaint that Darkseid lost too easily in that flashback. Like, he's supposed to be set up as, like, this, you know, very intimidating future villain.
Honestly.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's what he said in interviews after, and it's not made clear in the movie at all, and I also stumbled on that. I was like, oh, like, someone just hit him? And then he left, like, and then he just left, like, what? But I think what he's talked about after is that, like, the version of Darkseid we get there is like, it's like young, like, teenage Darkseid who's not like
emo
fully
Darkseid.
He's not like fully powerful yet, you know what I mean? This is like some of his first conquests, and so he gets like pretty easily beaten. But the idea would be that, like, when he comes to Earth after, he's like at his maximum, like, form. He's like,
and wearing armor and stuff.
It's like in Batman Begins when Bruce, like, trains and, like, before he trains, just like a little shit.
Yes, exactly. So I think that's supposed to be that, but that's not made clear, so whatever. I'm just for you guys' own, like, mental health. That's why I'm telling you that, but it's not made clear in the movie. I agree. Like, I thought that line about nukes was also kind of dumb, because I honestly thought when he was, like, tapping into the mother boxes that somehow, like, Darkseid would, like, reverse it on him, and then Darkseid would, like, have control of nukes and stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like, there's so much more they could have done with that.
It was just,
like, especially if you mentioned nukes by name, like, they're so powerful. You didn't have to tell us. Like, it's implied.
And Chernobyl's radioactive.
And that was the thing. It was the Chekhov's gun thing of, like, okay, so you brought up nukes.
Yeah. So I was like, okay,
gonna do anything with it?
This is how they're gonna kill him. And then we just wanted to let you know.
Maybe in a future movie.
That's never gonna happen.
Well, I mean, like I said, there was enough, like, this cut was all because of fan response.
That is true.
So who knows if, like, after seeing how much better this cut is than any of the other Snyder movies, maybe there will be, like, a push for future Snyder releases.
I think there already has
never know,
been,
really.
But
there is.
Yeah, like, initially, right now, he's saying he has no plans to continue.
Yeah.
But obviously, if enough people ask and he gets offered enough money. But I don't know. Like, I get it. He wants to show us his vision, or, I mean, you know, maybe he might just be over it and be thinking, fuck WB, I just wanted to service the fans this one time. But, like, I personally would not want to work with the WB ever again if I was him. Like, no matter how much money they offered me.
Here's the thing, though. I don't think he's going to get the chance. Not because there isn't fan demand, but, like, literally, like, 2 days ago, the president of WB came out, and someone asked, like, what do you think about all this, like, restore the Snyderverse stuff? And she was like, we're not making any more Zack Snyder movies. She was like, no. She was like, we're making new stuff, and no one's ever going to see a David Ayer cut of Suicide Squad. Like, she literally, like, said this, and she was just like, no, we're done. We're done. You guys got your movie. We're done. Now, they also said that about the Snyder Cut in the first place. Everyone was like, there is no Snyder Cut, it doesn't exist, and then eventually it happened. So I'm not saying like it's not gonna happen. I'm just saying we'll see. And also ultimately WB is owned by AT&T. Yeah. So if AT&T eventually is just like, hey, fuck you, and like fires this person that's the head of WB and then brings on someone that is okay with Zack,
yeah, that could change
everything. You know what I mean? So we'll see. I wouldn't be here. I'll say this. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the rest of the story in some form. Like if maybe we get a comic book, or if we get like an animated adaptation of it with maybe like the guys will come back, like the actors, and do just lend the voices. I mean,
yeah, that'd be cool.
I don't think I would watch or read that, as bad as it sounds. I'm interested enough that I will continue to support it in the form that I know, but I don't care enough to then like pick up a comic book to finish the story.
I would 100% read it if it was a comic book, just to see. I'm just curious. Like, I just want to see what... I mean, we know kind of what happens, but...
I would be interested in an animated
I think that could
movie,
work, too.
To be honest. Because DC Animated, like, they have a pretty good track record.
Yeah, for sure.
Of, like, some good stuff.
It could be fine. I don't know. I don't think we'll ever... Well, I shouldn't say... I don't think. I don't know. I don't know. Like, this has changed everything.
Who knows?
Who knows? We'll see what happens.
The future is uncertain.
Yeah, the future is uncertain. We haven't talked at all about Lois Lane being pregnant. We should probably talk about that before we...
I mean, they just showed pregnancy tests existing in her home. Are we supposed to imply that she's pregnant?
Okay. No. She's definitely... Because then at the end of the movie, Martha and Lois are bringing like a bassinet into the house, and Bruce turns to Clark and says, "Oh, congratulations!"
I was probably writing notes.
And then also, like, Zack Snyder has said, like, yeah, she is pregnant in this movie.
Okay, sorry. Speaking of Lois Lane and Superman in this cut of the film, because I know they got more time together upon reuniting and whatever. There's one scene when they first go back to Superman's house when it's still foreclosed and before Martha comes back, and Superman is just standing in a field staring off into the distance as he does, and Lois walks up behind him, and with no context whatsoever, he goes, "I'll take that as a yes," because she's wearing his ring. Like, we know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But they've been hanging out and reunited for who knows how long. Hours. Half a day. It's been on her finger the whole time. I'm sure they've talked about other things. Just out of nowhere, zero context. They haven't even made eye contact. He's not looking at her hand. Like, do you think, like, she... Like, obviously in the film she didn't even take a beat. It was just, like, a happy moment. But, like, I would be like, what is he talking about? Take what as a yes? Or are we talking about food or something? Like, she can't read his mind.
I think Superman, after coming back from the dead, has a little bit of brain damage.
He was like, you want to go get some Chinese?
Like, here's the thing. Superman keeps starting sentences by answering like questions or whatever that weren't there. Like, again, like going back to the not impressed line. Like, I think everyone around him is just like,
it's like he's remembering questions that were asked just before he died, and then he came back to life, and he's like, oh, here's the answer to that question, by the way.
Yeah, by the way. Oh my god.
I don't know. I didn't think much of Lois Lane's pregnancy. I kind of forgot that.
It's not there, to be honest. Like, it's not a plot point in this, but it was a part of the whole arc, which is apparently... I mean, I can lay it out for you guys. He's talked about what it is.
That would also, you know what, that feeds pretty well into, like, if, like, eventually when Lois would die, because maybe she would die with the baby, like, carrying the baby.
Yeah, so I believe the arc is she would... Basically, Darkseid would come to Earth. Bruce would, like, take Lois and, like, leave her in the Batcave to, like, try to protect her, but Darkseid would show up to the Batcave and kill her there. So in that scene where Superman's, like, holding Lois's dead body, you can actually see, like, the Robin suit in the background. So, like, he killed her in the Batcave. And then the world goes to Apocalypse timeline, and then ultimately the story would be that, like, the Flash would take Batman back in time, and Batman would, like, basically be there in the Batcave instead of Lois to, like, save Lois, but then die in the process. And then, like, Clark and Lois's son, who is, like, saved by this whole process, would be named Bruce. And then Bruce, for some reason, would not have any powers. And because he doesn't have any powers, and because he's named Bruce, and because, like, Bruce Wayne sacrificed himself, would then become, like, the new DC Batman. That was, like, the plan for all of this.
But with no money?
But how would that...
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
his only superpower is his money, as he explicitly says to Barry Allen.
Don't know what to tell you.
But how would that feed into the BVS Flash?
Yeah, that Easter egg doesn't work. We just got to forget that Easter egg happened. It doesn't,
Okay.
because he says Lois is the key. Cool. So he has to stop Lois from dying. I get that. But then he says, you were right about him. You were always right. Which, like we talked about,
Yeah. And why would he visit that?
why would he
Bruce
visit
Wayne,
that Bruce
like,
Wayne?
from that time?
Who is he talking to? Like, when he says you're right about him. Because Superman was a good guy for a long time. So why would he say that about Superman? And if he's not talking about Superman, who is he talking about? Darkseid? Like, okay. But, like, why would you... Like, yeah. I don't know. That scene doesn't make sense. It shouldn't exist.
Sorry, speaking of another scene that doesn't make sense. Or, like, it makes sense. But the Wonder Woman scene in the bank with the guys who wanted to blow up the bank and the surrounding 4 city blocks to set the clock back 1,000 years or whatever.
Yeah.
What was that all about? How was blowing up the bank gonna do that?
That was another
Me
problem.
too.
And that, like, I thought maybe in the Snyder Cut there was footage that we would see that would work that into the story somehow. It still just doesn't
Just a
fit in.
random group of
Really.
bad
It's just
guys.
like an introduction
Yeah.
for
That
Wonder
were
Woman.
completely
Yeah.
unrelated.
Yeah.
It's an unfortunate scene for a couple of reasons. It's unfortunate for me, going back to all my funny nitpicks. If this was a Marvel movie, like, you think about Spider-Man Homecoming, and, you know, Spider-Man in that movie, there's, like, those random thugs that he fights, and one of them is the Shocker, who, like, is a Spider-Man villain, and Spider-Man has to, like, take him down before he ends up fighting the Vulture, who's, like, the main villain of the movie. And to have, like, this DC movie, this introduction to Wonder Woman scene, and the bad guy in the scene that's trying to blow up the bank is just generic guy in a hat.
Yeah.
And I was like, why wasn't that, like, just some C tier DC villain? Because it doesn't feed into the rest of the plot anyway, so it could have literally been anyone. And you could have just made that a generic bank robbery. Like, why does blowing up to send back the 1,000 years?
Yeah.
Who cares? Who cares?
It's oddly specific. For
Yeah, like-
not having any.
Exactly. Just have it be like Black Mask, or like just like some gangster from the DC universe. The other part of that scene is weird, is that Wonder Woman, super fast, right? Blocking all the bullets, running up to guys, taking guns. Then there's one guy left, and instead of just running up and, like, punching him, she does her God Killer explosion bracelet blast.
And explodes
For a human being.
half the bank.
Eviscerates, creates an explosion equal to the explosion that would have happened. And then turns around to everyone and is like, okay, guys, so,
Yeah, are you guys all
okay.
right? All these children who were just shot at by a machine gun?
She turns
Like,
around,
no,
we're all
I
dead.
am not all
these
right.
children.
Yeah, she accidentally killed everyone.
And then, oh my god, also, immediately after she asked them if they're okay, one little girl just goes,
Yeah.
like, can I be like you? And she goes, oh yeah, you can be anything. And it's like, no, you cannot be like her. You do not have these powers. Don't think you can now run around killing bad guys. Just be lucky
know.
you're alive. Be an empowered woman. But, like, this is not your future path. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. That was a little on the nose.
It was like,
I
we're going to be cheesy and empower
ham-fisted,
women
yeah.
like the Wonder Woman standalone film did. But it's horrible. It doesn't actually make any sense and would not be what happened in that scene at all.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. This scene feels weird in both cuts for me. I don't particularly.
Yeah. It wasn't very.
Yeah, it wasn't a
improved.
great introduction of Wonder Woman in either movie. So,
Also,
sorry.
sorry. Speaking of Wonder Woman, I'm now going through my notes in chronological order. When Steppenwolf shows up on Themyscira and they're battling and they figure out that they are going to just trap all the parademons in wherever they were in that building, and then they knock down all the pillars. Why did knocking down the pillars of the building cause it to then fall into the ocean? Engineer, does that make sense?
Here's the thing. I'm an electrical engineer, so I don't know. But I will say, I think that whatever. I also was kind of like, I wonder how that's happening. But then I was like, yeah, whatever. Yeah.
It was pretty
whatever.
cool
Like,
to then see all the parademons like fly out of the ocean.
Yeah.
I did have a note where I was like, okay, that's lit, but
Yeah.
I just didn't compute in my brain.
Another religious reference, probably, like the locusts invading.
Oh my god.
That's what
you're
I'm saying. That's
probably
why I
right.
keep
whatever.
calling them Mothmen, even though I know now they're called parademons. But it's just more fun that way.
Parademons.
Guys, we haven't talked about the Justice League fight.
I was just gonna say, still the best scene in both cuts.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
And probably better without the one-liner that I heard was in the theatrical where Superman says, mockingly, "Do you bleed?" And Batman goes, like, probably somewhere or some bullshit like that.
And it's a CGI lip, so that was a Whedon reshoot.
Yeah, that's awful. And yeah, obviously like the CGI on Superman, the recoloring, so it's like later in the day, so the sun's up more, but everyone's suits look stupid because they weren't like lit to be like colored that way. So it's just like that. It's it definitely works a lot better here. And yeah, the fight's cool. Like Dan and I talked about, the best moment in this entire fight is Superman fighting off 3 people, and then the Flash starts running in slow motion, and Superman's eyes just look at the Flash, and it's just like it's still the funnest scene in this whole movie. If you're just like, oh god, Superman's gonna fuck him up. It's so good.
Yeah, because prior to the theatrical, which is when I first saw that, because this scene is from the theatrical, I didn't even know or realize that Superman could compete speed-wise with the Flash. So that was kind of cool. That was exciting.
Yeah, it's a fun moment, and
then they like go on to have a fight in their like frame of speed.
Yes,
like separate from the other people. Like they're having like it's slow-mo, but like it's actually a fast fight in their own little like space.
I dug that. I dug this whole scene. I will say, the one thing that is a reshoot that I think is probably better, which is probably the only thing in this movie that's a reshoot that I think is better, is just the very, 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 very end of the fight. In the theatrical cut, Batman intentionally brings Lois in case something goes wrong. And then when everyone gets fucked up, he's like, oh my god, fucking, like, Lois, and then, like, Lois shows up.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, Lois is just bringing the guy coffee and happens to be there. So, to me, like, again, we've talked about how Batman in these movies is an idiot. And so, I appreciated in the theatrical cut Batman, like, being 2 steps ahead and being like, okay.
That's a good point. That was a very Batman
thing.
That was not present.
Yeah, and it wasn't present here. And it didn't, like, ruin, like, by no means ruin the scene or whatever. But I just...
Yeah, but I noticed that too. I was like, oh, where did that shot go of him calling Alfred? He's like, I need the big guns.
Yeah, it's a cool moment because he says, I need the big guns. And you're like, what's going to happen? And then Lois shows up. And you're like... Yeah. And then, it's a fun moment. I have to say, though, guys, so Batman, like, Superman is, like, laser visioning Batman, and Batman's, like, Wonder Woman it up. He's blocking it. Yeah. And then he gets, like, pushed into the police car, and Superman's, like, hovering over him. And there was, like, a brief moment where I thought he was gonna say Martha. Like, I not even jokingly, I was like, because he didn't have the bring in the big guns line, and I was like, oh my god, are we gonna like get a Martha?
Are we bringing Martha
back?
Are we gonna get a reverse Martha? And then we didn't. Thankfully, we didn't. But there was just something about the way it was cut. It looked like Batman was about to deliver a line of dialogue at the last second, and I was like, fuck, is it gonna be like, are we gonna get the scene? But we didn't, thankfully. So all good, all clear.
You know what I like too that you just mentioned is Bruce's decision to like integrate Wonder Woman's gauntlet technology into his. That was
I
cool.
like that.
That was like Avengers type teamwork stuff.
Did that show up in the theatrical too? That he had those?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, I saw it was a side project that they included in the Snyder cut, and so I was like, it'd be interesting if they didn't show them developing it and he just used it without context.
Yeah, well, in the theatrical cut, there are a couple scenes of him just like blocking Parademon fire, and I remember being like, okay, I guess he just has an armored suit, but I do like though, I think that is a fun like character moment, and I like the stuff between like Alfred and Wonder Woman when he's like, oh yeah, like we made these gauntlets that can like absorb and reflect energy, and she's like, oh, did you also make a lasso? Yeah. You should probably make it come in black. And I was like, oh, that's funny. Like that's I like that. That was dope. I also like when the whole Justice League shows up at the Batcave the first time, and Batman's like, guys, this is Alfred. I work for him. And Alfred's just like, what? It reminded me a lot of like the Christopher Nolan when like Batman thinks he's gonna turn himself in The Dark Knight, and Alfred's like, so I guess they're gonna take me away as your accomplice. And Batman's like, accomplice? I'm gonna tell them the whole thing was your idea. And I was like, I just like that dynamic between the two of them. So I like to see that here as well. That was nice. That's something that confused me. Speaking like about some of the comedy in this, the comedy in this movie is so much better than the comedy in the theatrical cut. But
so why did they take it out?
Yes,
and rewrite
yes,
stuff?
They literally took out like decent comedy and then had Joss Whedon rewrite like shittier comedy.
I don't know. They're they had horrible confidence with this, I guess, to then call in all the new shit that like failed so spectacularly.
Yeah,
it's sad.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like a lot of the
it's
jokes...
just an out of touch. It's a tale as old as time. It's out of touch corporate like studio trying to use like lowest common denominators.
Yeah.
To rack in the money. That's all it is.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing, right? Is like a lot of the comedy in this movie actually feels more like Marvel movie comedy than the Whedon stuff. So it's just ironic that they were like, "Hey, Josh, write like Marvel comedy," but then a lot of the comedy in that movie feels stupid. Like in this movie, when you get, I like the scene between Aquaman and Flash with the hats, where he's like, "This is option A." He's like, "Absolutely not. What's option B?" And then he puts it on. He's like, "Okay, what's option A again?" Like that to me was like such a Marvel moment, and I was like.
And there's another one when Flash and Cyborg were digging up Superman's corpse, and he looks at Wonder Woman and he's like, "You think she'd ever go for a younger guy?" And Cyborg's like, "Barry, she's 3,000 years old. Every guy's a younger guy."
Yeah, that
was new.
That was
good.
Stuff there. There were some like actually funny moments in this movie. So
yeah, I did appreciate those, but at the same time, knowing that the theatrical one was the one where they were explicitly like, make it Marvel, then I guess seeing jokes in this one after seeing Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman and knowing the same dude was writing it, I was still kind of like, that doesn't feel Snyder because of what we saw previously. But if I forget the context, I was like, okay, yeah, that's funny. I like it.
Yeah.
For me, this one strikes the perfect tone. Out of all three of these movies, like, this one nails the tone.
Yeah, like, I wish they were all like that.
Yeah,
because then also it wouldn't be so weird to me. But because the other two weren't, it just felt out of place. Yeah.
There's a lack of consistency.
Yeah, absolutely. This definitely does feel... It's funny, in a lot of ways, this feels like the best I've seen Snyder be as a director in a while, in terms of, like really kind of getting all sides of it. But then also there's a lot of places where it feels... some of his worst traits are really brought out. Like, we're talking about... Like the epilogue, the slow-mo, the excessive slow-mo.
There is a lot of slow-mo
weird
in this movie.
Covers of songs instead of, like, musical score. So, it's like...
And for the record... Sorry, I'll just say, like, I'm not a fan of his visual style. And that's another thing I mentioned in the intro. Like, despite how this film looks, which I am still not a fan of, I still have to, like, that's his choice, and it's just not my thing. And I'm glad that he, like, is succeeding at making, at putting his visual style, his cinematic style out there. So I wanted to make that point.
I'm so glad you brought up visual style, because this was something that I've been thinking about for a week, and it's like genuinely a question I have for you, Dan, about like filmmaking, because I have a very specific thought, is that everyone talks about Zack Snyder like being such a good visual filmmaker, and like how good his like cinematography is or whatever, and how in his movies everything is like the frames of a comic book. And here's what I'll say: I think Zack is good at taking characters and things that we want to see and knowing how to block them in a frame and how to hold on that frame long enough to feel like comic books brought to life. But what I'm always very confused about, and you just kind of touched on this, is there's something about the way his visuals look that a lot of the times don't even look like photorealistic to me. Like, even things that are real kind of look almost CG-y.
Fantastical.
Yes, or they have...
And we talked about this in the last episode. Like, even the real stuff looks so fake. Like, very glossy.
100%. And I was trying to understand, like, I was trying to think about, like, is this something to do with the way the film is, like, lit? Or is this all post-production filters and crap on top of it? Because it really takes me out of scenes a lot of the time where, like, so let's talk about the Age of Heroes thing, which I think is such a cool moment, but then everything kind of just doesn't feel photoreal. It feels like a video game.
Okay, here's an opportunity to once again bring it back to the Lord of the Rings scene that we compared it to. That one feels so much more real.
Absolutely.
Like, looking back at that Sauron battle scene, like, there's all these real extras and, like, all the action, like, it feels like you're just watching, like, real life. I mean, besides the fantastical, like, decor and stuff, but, the actual action on screen feels real, as opposed to a lot of the action in this scene, the Age of
Yeah.
Heroes scene, and it has this sheen to it that feels like a video game cutscene, not in the sense that it doesn't look like we're watching real humans, but it looks like we're watching humans do things that like the motion of them looks like something from an animated
I know
cutscene, if that makes sense.
I know what you mean. It's just and it's frustrating, like, and maybe there like are a lot of people that really dig that. Like for me, it's I do appreciate his ability to like get stuff in the frame that is comic booky and like present it and block it in a comic booky way, but I much prefer that when it's also done in a way where the visual style does feel a bit more real and tangible. Like I kept thinking about the Batman trailer that we also covered on this podcast a while ago. Yeah. And like just how like textured everything is, and like there's that scene of like Batman just like in the rain and you can like see the individual rain droplets on him, and you know, like I much prefer that to this type of visual style. But yeah, I mean, it's his style, he's always done it, and obviously he's not going to change it for this movie, which is like his ultimate Zack Snyder, I can do whatever the fuck I want movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I just find it funny when people talk about him being such a good visual filmmaker, and I'm like, I mean, kind of, like half, like kind of. Like I like what's in the frame, I just don't always like how it looks, like, or like the almost the quality of the image itself. There's like an issue with, so.
And that's not all on him. Like every movie has a lighting. That, you know, there's the director of photography, which is not Zack Snyder. There's the lighting team, which is not him, but it's important to note he has like a huge influence on how his movies look, and especially in
absolutely. And that was something I've always been curious about, is for someone like him that all his movies do kind of have that look. I'm wondering if a lot of it is just like going back in post-production and
I'm
like
sure
fucking around with stuff till it looks the way he wants it to look. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know where exactly the blame lies on it, but yeah, I agree with you. It doesn't do it for me. So,
but that's, I mean, just to reiterate, that's our subjective take.
I think we need to reiterate that everything
like
we say on this podcast is just our subjective take.
Yeah. No. Everything we've said up to now has been fact.
Yeah. Especially the hangar scene where it's not something from the comics. That's an objective fact that made the movie worse. So.
Also, real quick, I'm surprised we haven't made this pun, but when we were talking about the Martian Manhunter as Martha, we never made like a Martha Manhunter joke.
The Martha Manhunter?
So I'm making that now.
Put it on the record.
And that's it.
The joke has been made. We're just going to leave it there.
We didn't miss that opportunity.
Do you guys have any miscellaneous last thoughts?
I have one. And that's it. I've looked through now all of my notes while you guys were talking about the Zack Snyder filming style, because I had no comments to add.
Fair enough.
So when the Amazonians send that arrow to their temple in Crete, and when Wonder Woman goes there, and she uses the arrow to unlock this hidden passageway thing, but to get in this hidden passageway, she just so happens to find some linen and some gasoline and something to light that on fire to then be Tomb Raider or Indiana Jones. Like, just what are the odds that at this random ancient site in Crete, she has everything she needs to make this torch for herself? Another nitpicky thing, but I was like, that's awful convenient. Unless she brought it, I don't know.
Well, it was like an excavation site, wasn't it?
I don't know. Was it? I honestly,
there was
I don't know.
There was like equipment set up there, I think.
But linen and gasoline and a big piece of wood.
Yeah, it was.
That's fair.
All right next to each other on a table.
Just shenanigans.
Well, clearly, okay, someone was gonna fix up a torch, and they laid every individual material out, and then they went to like go pee or something, and then she stole it and made it.
I'm surprised in this movie with a 4-minute foreign singing scene that we didn't also see. Yeah, I have 2 nitpicky miscellaneous notes. One, so last episode we really harped on the introduction to Batman, and also just like the introduction in general to most of the superheroes.
Oh, you mean like the first time?
Yeah,
you
it's just
see
like
them?
that, and he's like hiding, and then later he's just kind of walking around in the suit the first time you see him, and you're like, what is happening? Like what? So this movie, they do a very cool scene. The first time you see Batman in the suit, right? You get the shot, Jim Gordon on the roof.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, was this the first time we saw J.K. Simmons as Jim Gordon?
Yeah, first and last.
Wow,
He's definitely never coming back.
I was hoping we would see more of him in
Me
the
too.
Snyder Cut, but it's like pretty much the same as the theatrical.
Yeah, but he's on the roof, and it's night, and it's darkly lit, and we have a beautiful wide shot, and he just flips on the bat signal, and the bat signal's on, and then we cut, and you see him look up, and there's this tarp, and the tarp is like gently in the wind, and then as it like peels back, you just see Batman, like he's standing there, and he's a badass, and there's like a fucking storm behind him. He's badass Batman, and then he jumps down. And he jumps down and he like stands up and he's a badass. And then just off frame, Wonder Woman and Flash just walk into the shot. They just do a little bit like, "Hey, we're here too." And I was like, "God damn it!" Like
so close.
this whole scene, I was like, "Yes, like a character introduction." And then they literally just walk into the frame, and they must have been like right next to Gordon in the first place to be up there on the roof. And I was like, "Oh, like."
Bruce is like, "All right, guys, I'm gonna make this awesome." Like entrance, you guys have to wait for me to finish my entrance before you can walk in.
It's like
and they had no part of it.
They all came there together, right? Like they.
Yeah,
He's
Batman.
like, here's the coordinates. Meet me there.
Well, Flash and Batman get off the plane. They meet Wonder Woman. They talk. Flash sees the signal and is like, "Oh, that's your signal.
Yeah.
I'm Flash. I'm an idiot." And then Bruce is like, "Suit up. We gotta go see Gordon." And then Batman makes this dynamic entrance, and then they're just like, "Hey, we're here." And then like later in the scene, like they're all hanging out, and then Gordon turns and he looks back, and they're all gone except Flash, which I get is supposed to be a joke, but it doesn't make sense because like Wonder Woman's never seen Gordon before, and Cyborg has never seen Gordon before, and the Flash is the fastest one there.
Batman should have been the only one.
Yeah,
who
like
left.
how did they all leave and the fastest person there didn't notice, and also why did they all leave?
Yeah.
Like I don't know. It just that I for sure thought that was a Whedon cut joke, and I'm
me
really
too.
surprised to see it in this movie because it's just awful. It's just a stupid joke. It doesn't make any sense. My only other nitpick is that, as you mentioned, Carol, we get that voiceover where we learn about Cyborg's powers,
Yeah.
and here's how that voiceover happens: the Cyborg's dad shows up, and he's like, "You won't talk to me. Talk to me. I'm trying to be your dad." And Cyborg is like, "No," and then he says, "Okay. Here's a tape recorder where I have explained all your powers to you," and he puts it on the table and walks away. And then Cyborg immediately turns around, grabs the tape recorder, and starts listening to his dad explain to him all his powers. How did his dad know all these things that he could do? Also, why did his dad record this for him? I was baffled by this choice where like I don't understand who thought that was a good idea. Like, so he's gonna walk into the scene, put the tape recorder down, walk out of the scene, and then he's gonna play the tape recorder, which is just him talking. And I was like, what? Like, that is how you chose to get this information across? And also, it sucks because like the Flash should like learn about his powers by like having to use them and like fail at using them.
Do you mean Cyborg?
And oh, sorry, Cyborg. Yeah, not Flash, Cyborg. And in this scene, like he just has it all explained to him, and then he just uses them. And I was like, that kind of sucks. I like that would to have been a bit more like Cyborg going out there and actually learning, and not just, you know, have his dad tell him on a tape recorder. So anyway, that was my other nitpick. I didn't appreciate it. I thought it was kind of dumb. I know the tape recorder comes back, but see, I wouldn't have minded that if the dad like left this tape recorder and he like Cyborg just crushed it and never listened to it, and then like fixed it and listened to it at the end of the movie. But no, he does listen to it, but he just stops when his dad's about to say something nice. So whatever. I mean, like I said, this movie, you know, compared to the last couple of weeks, pretty good. So most of the stuff here is really nitpicky. It's not like nothing major. It's not like we're questioning why people are doing what they're doing or who's who or.
Yeah.
All right. Have we done it?
Yeah, I've gone through everything
I
on my
also
list.
have.
Do we want to quickly end this just by giving our rankings of the 4 movies?
Sure, yeah.
Carol, you haven't seen the theatrical cut, so you can just do the 3 if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I suspect we're all gonna have the same one.
I think we will, but
It's
go for
Justice
it.
Probably.
League, or Snyder's Justice League, because I don't know the other one.
Yeah.
And then Man of Steel, and then Batman vs Superman.
Yeah, that's the correct
Easy.
answer. That is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
Justice League at the very bottom.
Yeah, I figured we'd all have the same response.
I'm glad we're all on the
Alright,
same page.
well, that makes it easy. I really, yeah, like I said before, I'm glad we ended on this. It was a much more positive note. And to reiterate what I said in the intro, like, aside from what I think about the actual movie, I enjoyed the experience seeing the difference that you can make when you have one filmmaker on a project rather than, you know, a corporation. It's like a vast difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I
And I'm
agree.
very glad it was able to see the light of day.
Me too.
Yeah, this was a rumor for a long time, and now it's actually a reality.
And just to think, a month ago, I had no idea this was going to happen, and I didn't care at all. Oh, how far we've come.
Oh, how far we come.
Yeah, we've been on quite the journey, guys. The Man of Steel episode feels like a long time ago now.
Kind of was.
Well, there it is. I don't
Thanks
think
for
we have
joining
anything.
us.
I don't think we have anything to tease for people because we haven't decided what we're doing
No,
next. So
it will not be anything to do
I
with
thought we did.
superheroes. That's a promise.
Did we?
Well, we talked about a certain
We're-
musical being the next
Yeah,
Oh.
I thought we had landed on
Okay,
that.
are we
because
doing
it's
that?
near Easter when we're recording this,
We could
and
do
it'll
that.
be just after Easter, probably when it's released. Well, a little later.
Well, no, I mean Easter's this weekend. When we're
yeah, okay.
recording
It's gonna
this,
be
so-
like a month after Easter.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, we can do it if you guys want to do it. We can do it. I'm
I'm
always
down.
I love
Okay.
it.
So, for all you Zack Snyder fans who like seeing Superman be Jesus, we are going to talk about actual Jesus Christ Superstar, the movie adaptation of the musical the rock opera
Yes.
by
How dare
Andrew
you.
Lloyd Webber. Oh my god, I'm so excited.
So
It's one of my
excited.
faves. It might be my favorite. It's insane. I love every second of it, and
It's
yeah,
gonna
it's
be
great.
fun.
Favorite musical?
Rock
or like
opera, Dan.
favorite-
Rock
It's my
opera,
favorite
its
rock
own-
opera. I'll say
Sorry.
it's definitely my favorite rock
Oh,
opera.
okay. Well, how many rock
I
operas
mean, just
are
this
there?
one. So,
Oh my God.
So it's my favorite too. I haven't even
yeah,
seen it.
exactly.
Yeah, so
can't
join
wait.
us for that next time.
Yeah, we'll leave you with that.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
All right, thanks,
Thanks.
guys.
Hashtag restore the Snyderverse.